Chapter 281. He had said so much in the beginning, but in the end, no one listened to him. This made him lose face. This was a complete loss of face in front of everyone. This made Bei Ho Liang feel his face burning. Li Zongjio did not put him in his eyes at all. After dismissing the rest of the people, Shang Diqing also gave the remaining 3 people a scroll each. The contents of the scroll showed that it was an examination ticket. Although you have passed the examination of the Black North Giant City, you will have to compete with people from the 12 prefectures, nearly 100 second-class cities, 30 first-class cities, and the Sacred Flame Royal City for the quota. With your strength, if you work hard in the last half a month, there is still a great hope. Shang Diqing said. Yao Lei's eyes were fixed on a ray of light. She had worked hard, but in the end, she would have to face so many opponents. These opponents could be said to be on the same level as her, or even higher than her. Therefore, this was a very tough battle. Zhang Heshuan's eyes were also burning with fighting spirit. The only person present who did not have any fluctuations and was even thinking about his own matters was Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio had nothing to say. Enemies and the like were all fleeting clouds in his eyes. If you were not fleeting clouds, then he would turn you into a pile of smoke. Shang Diqing memorized Li Zongjio's words. After all, to be able to do this, Li Zongjio was definitely a very powerful person. However, there were too many people like him. In the entire Xingyan dynasty, there were countless elites and powerful people. They had even become third-grade alchemists at a young age. This kind of ability was already extremely outstanding among his peers. If he could become a 4th-grade alchemist, he would be directly recruited into the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Of course, he still had to go through the formalities. Half a month later, after passing the test, they would have to bring the admission ticket to Holy Yen City for the final test and selection. Because the Xingyan dynasty was too big, some places had only just begun the test. It would take some time to go through the entire process. Shang Diqing and the others were not responsible for the safety of Li Zongjio and the others. He did not lead the way for them either. After all, this was not a small expense. On the same day, Shang Diqing and the others returned. The situation here needed to be reported in a timely manner. Even Bei Ho Liang followed Shang Diqing back to the city. Before returning, Bei Ho Liang also returned to the western city's medicinal forest to retrieve his dark hand bone. However, when he returned to the place where he buried the hand bone a few days ago, no matter how hard he searched, he could not find his dark hand bone. How is that possible? I clearly buried it here. I brought it back as a gift for eldest senior brother. Where did my dark hand bone go? Bei Ho Liang was in a panic right now. In order to get that thing, he had paid a huge price and spent a lot of sweat. In the end, he still managed to get that thing. Money was a small matter, but he had to do a lot of favors and things that he had to ask people to settle. After all, this kind of power could be said to be a forbidden item. Finally, after a series of operations, it was placed in the black market to be traded. However, it was now missing. One could imagine how panicked Bei Ho Liang was in his heart. Damn it, it must be with that kid. Li Zongjio, just you wait. If you don't let me live well, I won't let you live well either. Bei Ho Liang roared. This Li Zongjio really did not shed tears until he saw the coffin. He actually wanted to step on Bei Ho Liang's head. However, there was no time now. He must meet up with the director and the others. Wait until we reach Holy Yen City. See how I will deal with you. At this moment in the city, Li Zongjio, Han Qinglu, and the cold-faced woman were walking together. This person had also passed the assessment. Although Li Zongjio did not care, those who could pass the assessment were not bad. However, Li Zongjio did not put them in his eyes. Han Qinglu looked at Li Zongjio who was beside him, and his heart skipped a beat. Little Li, where are you from? Luoxia City, Li Zongjio said while looking straight ahead. His attitude was extremely dull. However, Han Qinglu did not show any dissatisfaction. After all, Li Zongjio had cultivated the 5-colored soft intestine flower in such a short time. His potential was limitless. Once Li Zongjio entered the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Mansion, he would certainly be a young elite when he came out. If such a person could be recruited into the Alchemist Alliance, then it would be a huge fortune. Luoxia City, the most beautiful city in the south. Although it is located in a remote area, it is indeed a beautiful place. Han Qinglu said. Obviously, Han Qinglu also had some understanding of Luoxia City. When I was young, I also went to Luoxia City. I saw the scenery of Luoxia and lone centipede flying together. It was indeed breathtaking. Li Zongjio looked at Han Qinglu in surprise. He was indeed an experienced person. He knew how to arouse people's interest in chatting. Li Zongjio would have ignored Han Qinglu if he had talked about how much he would pay and how much he would pay if he joined the Alchemist Alliance. However, Han Qinglu was very smart. He told Li Zongjio about Luoxia City. Who was Li Zongjio? He was a person who had been reborn. Therefore, he loved and cherished his hometown even more. Now that he heard someone praising his hometown, he naturally had a good impression of this person. Of course, the scenery of my Luoxia City is unparalleled in the world, Li Zongjio said. However, there was a hint of confidence in the corner of his mouth. Humph, I don't believe it, Yao Lei said from the side. Obviously, she did not believe that Luoxia City could have such beautiful scenery. Li Zongjio also did not refute. If there is an opportunity in the future, you can cooperate with our Luoxia City. Li Zongjio said. This was a friendly invitation. It would be good for the Li family to make friends with some forces outside. Listening to Li Zongjio's words, Han Qinglu nodded. Of course. That's right. I noticed that you haven't taken the Heavenly Pill Pavilion's Alchemist assessment. If you are able to take the Heavenly Pill Pavilion's assessment, it will be beneficial for you. Alchemists like us can also have a good exchange. Han Qinglu said. That kind of assessment is useless to me. I don't need it, Li Zongjio said lightly. Yao Lei heard Li Zongjio's words and immediately thought that Li Zongjio was deliberately putting on an act. That was the assessment of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. If he could get a title, it would be a golden signboard. No matter where he went, people would recognize him. However, after thinking about it, Li Zongjio was able to cultivate the 7-colored soft intestine flower in 7 days. Although she did not know what method he used, it was definitely powerful enough. Maybe Li Zongjio really did not care? Han Qingliu's eyes moved. Then, he took out a token from his sleeve. Li friend, this is the Foreign Affairs Elder Token of the Black North Medicine Alliance. I don't have anything else with me. With this token, all the consumer facilities in the city, including the purchase of medicinal herbs, can be discounted. If you have any business dealings with the Luoxia City in the future, no matter who it is, you will receive generous gifts with this token. Another token. Did these people not have anything to give? In his previous life, Li Zongjio had received a bunch of tokens. The shapes of these tokens were strange and there were many symbols on them. In the end, he could not remember all of them. But now, these tokens might be able to bring convenience to the Li family. Looking at Han Qingliu's sincere eyes, Li Zongjio took it. Okay, I'll give you face. You're a good person. That's all. See you next time. Li Zongjio took the token. He casually threw it into the storage ring. Later, he would find time to send it to the Luoxia City. Li Zongjio was not clear about the current situation in the Luoxia City. But with Luo Sha and the other two guarding the city, plus the existence of the Fog Snow Pill sect, there should not be any problem. As long as Li Zongjio's mental strength continued to grow stronger, he would be able to communicate with the golden-winged blue-tailed eagle from thousands of miles away. In that case, he would be able to know the situation of the family. Li Zongjio directly left. Han Qinglu and Yao Lei also stopped. Humph, an impolite guy. Yao Lei coldly snorted. Don't underestimate Li Zongjio. He may be a 4th-grade alchemist. Han Qinglu slowly said. What, this? How is this possible? Yao Lei suddenly opened her mouth in surprise. But from the mouth of Grandpa Han, if he was not sure, he would not say it so confidently. This Li Zongjio, a 4th-grade alchemist. Chapter 282. Yao Lei's mood could not calm down for a long time. Li Zongjio always had a cool and indifferent look on his face, as if he was an extraordinary expert and the people around him were just ordinary people. Most importantly, Li Zongjio was only interested in his own affairs. Even if the entire Xianbei giant city was attacked by meta-beasts, he would not even blink an eye. Such a person. It was really troublesome. Such an indifferent character was also annoying. Although Yao Lei's character was also relatively indifferent, it was only to prevent some annoying flies. Yao Lei didn't mind interacting with some young talents. When she was in the Western City Medicinal Forest, she finally found out that Li Zongjio had really cultivated the 5-color soft intestine flower. Because of Beiho Liang's interference, all of this became traceable and even some things became unreal, so Yao Lei did not feel much. It was not until she heard her grandpa Han's words that she suddenly remembered. What Li Zongjio did, it was impossible for them to achieve even if they worked hard. He did not care about the title of Heavenly Pill Pavilion. He did not even care about the token of the External Affairs Elder of Xianbei Medicine Alliance. It could be seen that Li Zongjio really did not care about these things and was not deliberately pretending in front of him. So at this moment, Yao Lei finally knew why Grandpa Han valued Li Zongjio so much. It should be known that this was the token of the External Affairs Elder. The status was quite respected. In the entire Xianbei Medicine Alliance, there were only 3 people who had this token, and Li Zongjio was the 4th. It was just that he was such a young 4th-grade alchemist. Yao Lei still did not believe it in her heart, because it was really too shocking. One had to know that her master, Han Qingliu's grandfather, had only become a grade 4 alchemist at a very old age. Even Yao Lei herself was only a 2nd-grade advanced alchemist now. It would still take a certain amount of time to become a 3rd-grade alchemist. As for becoming a 4th-grade alchemist, her master had said that this required luck. If the opportunity came, he would naturally have the opportunity to become a Tier 4 alchemist. Before that, what he needed to do was to concentrate on his cultivation, build a good foundation, and wait for the opportunity to come. And how old was Li Zongjio? He was even younger than her. Therefore, Yao Lei temporarily threw this terrifying thought to the back of her mind. 4th-grade alchemist? How could that be? She wouldn't believe it no matter what he said. Li Zongjio returned to his inn and settled the bill. Li Zongjio didn't come back for the past 7 days, but the accounts were still in his hands. For ordinary people, this was money that they would never be able to earn in their lifetime. However, Li Zongjio didn't care. Just the money he received from those rich kids far exceeded this amount by hundreds or even tens of thousands of times. The owner of Yulai Inn didn't take advantage of Li Zongjio. I'll waive the bill for the next few days. Last time, it was my inn that let you down. However, the Bei family is very powerful in the city. They may not dare to do anything in the city, but once you leave the city, you have to be careful. The owner of the inn kindly reminded Li Zongjio. He could tell that Li Zongjio wasn't an ordinary person. These days, he hadn't returned to the inn, so he thought that Li Zongjio had something to do with him. Now, it seemed that he had gone to participate in the Heavenly Day Medicine Manners examination. Those who could participate in the Heavenly Day Medicine Manners examination were naturally capable people. The owner of the inn was also apologetic about the previous incident. After all, the other party had spent so much money and still couldn't settle the matter. The main reason was that he didn't dare to provoke the Bei family. "Where's my horse?" Li Zongjio nodded and asked. Soon, the waiter brought the red-maned horse over. Li Zongjio first went to the relay station and sent the External Affairs Elder's token back to Luoxia City. It might be useful in the future, but if it was left with Li Zongjio, he wouldn't know where it would end up. The relay station was a transmission link built by the Xingyan dynasty. Almost every day it would move. Even the slightest movement of grass would pass through this relay station and be transmitted. Li Zongjio rode the red-maned horse and headed north. Sacred Flame City. Sacred Flame City was the center of the entire Xingyan dynasty, and people from all directions came here to pay their respects. It was the gathering place of almost all the experts in the world. It was like the center of a huge whirlpool. Here, one could enjoy a high position. Only here could one become a true expert. If you had the heart to become an expert and wanted to make a name for yourself, you had to come to the Xingyan dynasty. This was a height that the 13 prefectures couldn't reach. In his previous life, Li Zongjio also spent a lot of time in Sacred Flame City. Because the city was rich in resources, You could get whatever you wanted. As long as you had enough money, you could get whatever you wanted. If you were stuck at a bottleneck, you could find an alchemist and ask him to refine a pill for you. That would solve your problem easily as long as you could afford it. In Sacred Flame City, there were top alchemists, spirit masters, and elemental inscriptions masters from all over the country. All the top people of different professions gathered here. Ancient Martial Pavilion, Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor, these top institutions were also established in Sacred Flame City. There was no reason for top resources not to come to Sacred Flame City. For young people, this was a place with countless opportunities. Things that were difficult or even impossible to come into contact with in other places could possibly exist in Holy Yen City. Li Zongjio sat on the back of a horse and spread out the map in his hand. Start from here and walk for 700 miles. After crossing the Qianding River, you will enter the pass. After entering the pass, walk for another 800 miles and you will arrive. There weren't any cities near Sacred Flame City. There were only checkpoints and fortresses. Although they were similar in scale to cities, their names and functions were different. In other places, the city lord might have the highest authority. However, in such checkpoints and fortresses, the commander of the army definitely had the highest authority and status. This was because he was in charge of controlling the flow of people in and out of the checkpoints. At the same time, he was also the most direct force that mobilized the troops stationed in various places. No matter where natural or man-made disasters occurred, the soldiers in the checkpoints would rush over as soon as possible. The soldiers' role wasn't just to fight and defend against the enemy. They were almost omnipotent. It was normal for them to contribute to the people. Of course, the checkpoints were also the hubs of transportation. In order to prevent the enemy's army from gathering, they were usually set up near the elemental beast forest. Once there was a big movement, the elemental beast would take the initiative to greet you. In the past, Li Zongjio didn't care about these things. However, now it seemed that he had a lot of knowledge. No matter who wanted to rebel, they would first have to break through the 8 checkpoints surrounding Sacred Flame City. At least 1/3 of the checkpoints had to be broken through. Otherwise, the 8 checkpoints would support each other and one wouldn't have a chance to succeed in a surprise attack. It will be more difficult than ascending to the heavens for the army you lead to approach Holy Flame City. It was a distance of nearly 2,200 miles. In addition to the rugged mountain path and the time needed to travel, 15 days was a little rushed. Li Zongjio didn't hesitate. He immediately rode the blood mane horse and headed towards the Qianding River. Taha! The horse galloped. Its speed suddenly soared as if it was stepping on thunder. In the blink of an eye, it had rushed into the distance. Just after Li Zongjio galloped away on his horse. On the mountain peak in the distance, there was a group of men in black holding a long tube-like telescope in their hands. They stared at Li Zongjio's figure. Since this person is riding a horse, he must be going to the Qianding River to take a boat. We will ambush him on the boat. Young Lord said that if we can't bring this person back, we will have to atone for our sins with death. Chapter 283. Qianding River. It was the second largest river in Dingquan Province. The river was turbulent and if one accidentally fell into the water, he would be washed away by the river in less than a minute. At the same time, the river was more than 200 meters wide and was rich in resources. Sometimes, there would even be some meta beasts that would rush out from the water. It was quite dangerous. However, the Xingyan dynasty built some Vajra pillars in the upper and lower reaches of the river to allow people to pass through the river. The purpose of these things was to prevent large meta beasts from crossing the river. As for a bridge, it was impossible to build one because the river was too wide. In addition, the water level rose every year. The river was even more powerful than the meta beasts. Qianding Pier. The merchant ships that came and went ashore here. They were mainly used to transport large items or large quantities of items. After all, the space of a storage ring was limited. For example, if one wanted to transport some mountain rocks or wooden pillars, how many storage rings would be needed to store them all? A storage ring with a large space was expensive to make, and it was extremely rare. Li Zongjio came to the Qianding Pier. The journey of 700 miles took 2 days. Because it was impossible to run all the way, the red mane horse was unwilling to do so. Li Zongjio rested for a night along the way. On the second day, he arrived at the Qianding Pier at dawn. The next boat will take 40 minutes. Let's rest. Li Zongjio bought 2 boat tickets. One of them was for the red mane horse. Qianding River. Back then I killed meta beasts on this river. Li Zongjio thought. However, this time was also a few years in the future. In his previous life, there was once a domineering meta beast on Qianding River. It was good at swimming and had a cruel nature. It liked to eat people. The traffic in the Qianding River was blocked for 3 months. In these 3 months, no one dared to spend time on Qianding River. In the end, the Saint Flame Empire also sent experts over. At the same time, they also recruited experts from various places to deal with the meta beast. Li Zongjio needed to refine an elixir, and he needed the meta crystal of a water-attributed meta beast. That was to kill the soul beast. That water demon king shouldn't have appeared so soon. Back then, after the water demon king succeeded, it dove into the water and dived to the bottom. Its whereabouts were unknown, but if someone passed by, it would immediately sense it. Moreover, it swam extremely fast in the water. In order to kill the Water Demon King, he spent a lot of energy and fought with the Water Demon King in the water. On the Qianding River, a huge ship was slowly approaching. They could already feel the aura of the ship from afar. It was like a giant beast hiding in the water. It was this aura that caused some of the weaker Yuan beasts to not dare to approach it. Moreover, half of the components of this transport ship came from Cerulean Wave Colossal City's Zheng family. The Zheng family could be said to be a major shipbuilder. Whether it was the ships that flew in the sky or the ships that floated on the sea, they were involved in everything. With these skills and abilities, the Zheng family was enough to become a top-notch existence. It was just that they still needed time. Alright, line up and get on the ship. If anyone dares to snatch it, I will push him off. The dock was also outsourced to the local tycoon. The tickets that were collected had to be paid a huge amount to rent the ship. It was just to make a living. If they were asked to buy such a huge ship, they didn't have the ability to do so. Li Zongjio led the horse and boarded the ship. There were almost 300 people on the ship, and they were all crowded in the passageway to board the ship. As for this giant ship, it wouldn't be a problem for it to carry 3,000 people at once. Li Zongjio boarded the ship and took the initiative to walk to the deck. The red-maned horse also stepped on the deck easily. The huge waves in front of them swayed, but the ship itself was stable. It was just that the wind on the deck was a little strong. Raise the sail. The crew on the deck shouted loudly, and the huge sail was immediately pulled up. The boats designed by the Zheng family were actually powered by yuan crystals. However, they couldn't afford to use them like that. The places that sold tickets couldn't afford the consumption of yuan crystals. Hence, it was better to use the wind power obediently. They would only activate it when they encountered an emergency. Inside the ship's cabin, more than 10 assassins in disguise had also mixed in. However, among the passengers, there was a woman. There was a woman among them. She held a blood-edged long saber in her hand, and her eyes were filled with cold light. She had already noticed the assassins when she boarded the ship. These assassins could be said to be some low-level goods. The murderous aura on their bodies was so obvious that it was impossible for them to hide their identities. At first, she thought that these assassins were here to kill her. It's him. The woman saw the person leading the horse on the deck. Li Zongjio. When she saw Li Zongjio, she couldn't help but want to cut off Li Zongjio's head. If it wasn't for Li Zongjio, she wouldn't have to run around like this. Finally, after weighing the pros and cons, she put the blade back on her leg. Li Zongjio also sat down cross-legged. This ship would take at least 30 minutes. Hence, there was still some time to rest. When the boat reached the middle of the Qianding River, a few people stood up and groped their way forward from the 2 sides of the boat. Their goal was to surround Li Zongjio from the front and back. The leader also stood up, followed by 7 or 8 people. Their hands were on the daggers in their arms. They slowly walked toward Li Zongjio. Attack! The leader immediately gave the order. Everyone was ready to attack. Suddenly, they felt a fishy wind. Ha! When the leader of the group turned around, the people around him had already rushed out. However, someone actually attacked him? By the time that man turned around, he saw a woman holding a long blade and slashing toward his neck. Fuck! The assassin immediately fell down, but the opponent's blade was faster. Swoosh! The saber landed on his shoulder, almost cutting off half of his body. Bang! His body fell to the ground. The dozen people rushed toward Li Zongjio. Damn it! The woman gritted her teeth. Suddenly, she stomped her foot and attacked. The blade in her hand moved, and with a swoosh, she easily cut down the people in front of her. Bang bang! Be careful! The woman shouted at Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio didn't seem to notice, still sitting in the same place. The woman didn't know if she had made the right choice. This move could have cost her her life, but if she hadn't done so, she would have lost this opportunity. It wouldn't be long before she died on the road. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Li Zongjio opened his eyes. He saw that the people around him had all fallen to the ground. Behind Li Zongjio stood a woman who was holding a long saber that was bleeding nonstop. The passengers and crew in the cabin were scared silly. The woman had killed more than a dozen people in the blink of an eye. It was as if she was cutting grass. She had killed them all. Only the leader clutched his broken shoulder and struggled to lift half of his body. He wanted to see the situation, but all he saw was corpses all over the ground. Li Zongjio was still standing in the same place. Are you the blood strike guard? Li Zongjio turned around and saw the woman behind him. Regardless of whether it was the figure or the expression in his eyes, Li Zongjio recognized him with a single glance. The person in front of him was the blood robe guard who had tried to protect Zhang Yu in the northern Medicine City governor's mansion back then. Unfortunately, Zhang Yu hadn't been strong enough. He had still killed Zhang Yu. If these people hadn't fled, Li Zongjio would have killed them all. He had already noticed this person when he had boarded the ship. She was a blood strike guard with a bronze rank. The murderous aura and blood aura on her body had already reached a restrained level. She was young and could be molded. However, when she saw him, she should have captured him. Why did she help him get rid of these enemies? That's right. Thanks to you, I am being chased by the blood strike guard. Either you kill me today, or I'll follow you, the woman said. Her stubborn eyes were fixed on Li Zongjio. If Li Zongjio hadn't brought her along, a large number of blood strike guards would have found him in less than 3 days. He wouldn't have lived for more than 3 days. Chapter 284. Li Zongjio glanced at the woman before him. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you now? Li Zongjio asked. However, the woman raised her head slightly. One could see the incomparable determination in her eyes. The fact that she was able to become a 3-bronze blood strike guard of Qingyuan Manor at such a young age was enough to show that she had experienced a lot. If she didn't have sufficient talent and determination, it would be difficult for her to persevere. I'll die sooner or later. If you want to kill me, then I'll die a quick death. There wasn't the slightest bit of fear in her eyes. Although she was already forced into a dead end, she wasn't willing to die like this. This scene reminded Li Zongjio of himself in his previous life. In order to survive, he had also struggled through countless sufferings and tribulations. In the end, he had also become the final winner. Very few people had such perseverance and determination. Most of the time, it depended on luck. Sometimes, hard work wasn't enough. It really depended on what kind of person you met. Therefore, when she saw Li Zongjio, the woman didn't hesitate. What's your name? Li Zongjio's tone softened a little. It didn't matter to him whether he killed one more person or one less person. Since this person had been a blood strike guard, it would definitely be a pleasant thing for him to turn around and deal with Qingyuan Manor with the blade in her hand. My code name is Gold Silver Bird. You don't even have a name? Since you're a 3-bronze blood strike guard, then I'll call you Santong from now on. Li Zongjio said indifferently. When she heard Li Zongjio's words, the woman initially didn't dare to believe it. She hadn't expected that Li Zongjio would actually be willing to take her in. One had to know that bringing her along would undoubtedly increase the degree of danger, and the speed at which Qingyuan Manor would find them would also greatly increase. It wouldn't be long before Li Zongjio was caught. Perhaps he would die even faster. After all, both of them were thorns in Qingyuan Villa's eyes. However, this woman had seen Li Zongjio's actions and actually dared to openly confront the Qingyuan Villa. She definitely had her own confidence and strength. It was better than him directly dying like this and wanting to take it. 3 coppers. Could this name be any more casual? However, San Tong didn't care. To her, this name was just like her previous code name. It was just a code name. San Tong, thanks master. You don't have to call me master. Just call me young master. Li Zongjio said. San Tong's desire to live had moved Li Zongjio. Therefore, Li Zongjio wanted to see how far a person could grow with his help. Li Zongjio didn't restrict San Tong in any way. If San Tong wanted to leave, then he could. If he wanted to kill Li Zongjio, then he could go. Li Zongjio had 10,000 ways to turn San Tong into ashes. This point, San Tong must be very clear in his heart. Throw these corpses into the river. Li Zongjio said. If this continued, it wouldn't be good. Yes, young master. In less than a minute, more than a dozen corpses were thrown into the river. During this process, the passengers on the ship didn't dare to get close. After all, Li Zongjio and the others were too strange. Based on the way they did things, it was obvious that they weren't ordinary people. Moreover, they had killed so many people. Although they were on a public ship, strictly speaking, they weren't in the city. Unless someone reported the case and someone came to investigate, Li Zongjio and the others could kill everyone on the ship without a problem. Most of these people were ordinary people. Some of them were just crossing the river to work. They didn't want to cause trouble at all. They just watched as the girl expressionlessly disposed of the corpses. Some of them desperately covered the eyes of their companions, afraid that San Tong would remember their faces. They also wanted to show that they didn't see these things. With a loud boom, the ship reached the shore. When the ship reached the shore, the passengers and some of the crew stuck their heads out one by one. However, they found that the boy and girl had already disappeared from the deck. Along the way, San Tong bought a horse from a passerby. Along the way, it was common for them to meet caravans by chance. It was also very normal for them to buy some food and other supplies. Of course, Li Zongjio was the one who paid for it. San Tong didn't have a single cent on him. As they approached a border town, they came across a roadside shop. The fragrance of noodles wafted over. Li Zongjio wasn't hungry, but when he heard the cold expression on San Tong's face, his stomach started to growl. Although the situation was a little awkward, San Tong still managed to control his expression. How long has it been since you last ate? Half a month, San Tong replied. Half a month? That was about the time Li Zongjio had killed Zhang Yu. It seemed like San Tong had encountered a disaster when he had returned. What's so hard about killing someone and robbing them after fleeing for so long? The Blood Strike Guard isn't a bandit. Our duty is to protect. San Tong seemed to choke up as he said this. Unless you were a god, you wouldn't be able to survive without eating for half a month. That's bullshit. Li Zongjio scolded him. San Tong looked at Li Zongjio in surprise. He didn't understand why Li Zongjio was so agitated all of a sudden. Remember, being alive is everything. Duty and responsibility are all bullshit. People are already dead, so what's the point of being righteous? Li Zongjio seemed to be deeply moved by this. Although San Tong wasn't very happy with his words, he didn't retort. However, he still said this. San Tong will remember young master's teachings. Remember, if you reach a dead end, there's no need to be polite. Kill them until they turn the world upside down. Li Zongjio flicked his sleeves and jumped down from the red mane horse. San Tong remained seated on his horse as he pondered over Li Zongjio's words. Indeed, San Tong's heart was shaken at this moment, and a storm was set off in his heart. Boss, give us 2 bowls of noodles. While San Tong and Li Zongjio were eating noodles, a group of people dressed like bandits walked over from afar. They pushed the table and came over in a hustle and bustle. There were many of them. When they saw Li Zongjio sitting at San Tong's table, they immediately walked over with great interest. A loud smack was heard. A golden machete was slammed on the table. His iron boots were covered in mud and he stepped on the stool. There was a green foxtail in his mouth. He sat opposite San Tong, while Li Zongjio sat on his right. "Oh, what a tender girl. Do you want to play with us?" Chapter 285. However, San Tong acted as if he did not hear anything. He continued to eat the noodles in his bowl. In such a short time, San Tong had already eaten 3 big bowls of noodles. He was definitely able to eat. "Boy, is this your girl? She's mine now. Get out of my way." As he spoke, the burly man tried to push Li Zongjio's shoulder. At that moment, San Tong made his move. San Tong's hand suddenly shot out. Just as the burly man's hand was about to touch Li Zongjio's shoulder, San Tong grabbed his hand and twisted it effortlessly. With a snap, the burly man's finger was broken by San Tong. "My hand. You're courting death." In the next moment, San Tong picked up the bowl in front of him and smashed it on the burly man's head. The burly man was directly sent flying by San Tong and fell to the ground. Blood spurted out from his head. "You're courting death, stinky girl." The burly man's subordinates saw this and gathered around. San Tong also stood up without hesitation and blocked in front of these people. Just as Li Zongjio had said earlier, he would turn the world upside down. "Cripple this woman and that boy over there." The leader, whose head was smashed, roared. Hearing the leader's order, these people did not hesitate. They all picked up their weapons and charged at San Tong. However, San Tong was faster. Moreover, with her strength as a blood uniform guard, these ordinary bandits were not enough for her to kill. This time, San Tong did not show any mercy. She did not use her blood-rimmed long saber, but a dagger at her waist. In just half a minute, these people's necks had been stabbed. Most of them were not directly killed, but their blood did not stop flowing. It continued to flow through the gaps between their fingers. Some people simply sat on the ground and waited for their deaths. They waited for their blood to continue flowing. Their hearts beat faster as they felt their blood flowing away. Their consciousness gradually became blurry. Don't kill me." The leader, whose head was smashed, lived to the end. He had never seen such a bloody, cruel, and inhumane way of killing people. After cutting open their necks, he watched as their blood flowed out bit by bit. He didn't show any mercy at all. After doing all this, he looked at him very calmly. "Speak, who sent you?" San Tong said coldly. Her many years of experience as a bloodstrike guard had taught her that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The assassins on the ship and the robbers in the restaurant had clearly been hired by the same person. Because they all seemed to have a common trait, which was that they were not professional. If it wasn't done by Qingyuan Villa, then it was done by other enemies. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win every battle. Since he was now under Li Zongjio's command, of course, he had to make some contributions under Li Zongjio. Otherwise, why would Li Zongjio bring such a dangerous person with him? It's Bei Ho Liang from Black North Giant City. It was Bei Ho Liang who gave us the money to come. After the leader finished speaking, he felt a chill on his neck. Regardless of whether he spoke or not, his fate would be the same. Blood spurted out from his throat. The leader immediately clutched his throat and pointed at San Tong. His eyes were as wide as copper bells, as if to say, "I've already confessed. Why do you still want to kill me?" However, his gaze didn't last long. His neck tilted and he fell to the ground. The dozen or so corpses would soon turn cold. Bei Ho Liang from Black North Giant City. San Tong looked at Li Zongjio. When Li Zongjio heard this, he didn't seem surprised at all. It was as if he had already guessed it. "Let's go." Li Zongjio spurred his horse and landed on the red-maned horse. San Tong quickly chased after him. The dozen or so corpses on the ground were left there. The owner of the restaurant didn't know what to do. There were so many corpses, and these people were like the kings of the nearby mountains. He had heard about them before, but he hadn't expected that such legendary figures would die in front of his eyes. What should we do? After some preparations, early in the morning of the second day, several figures appeared in front of the noodle shop. They wore pointed hats and green boots. One of them had a long knife at his waist with 4 copper wires wrapped around the handle. This person's gaze was like a griffin. When he stared at you, You would feel as if a piece of flesh had been dug out from your body. It was so ruthless. Casually looking at the corpses on the ground, they were all killed by a knife at the neck. Clean and neat. Furthermore, before these people died, they also felt the pain of their lives being drained away. This kind of execution style method. It was incomparably familiar. It's Jin Yinyao's blood-sealing knife. Shopkeeper, where did those people go? Wudingxing Pass. There were 70,000 heavy infantrymen and 20,000 cavalry stationed in the pass. Within a day, they could move 300 miles. It would take them less than 3 days to reach the next pass. If the cavalry went first, they would be one step faster. Near Wudingxing Pass, there were 3 gathering places for origin beasts. These places were extremely dangerous, but at the same time, they were rich in resources. Within Wudingxing Pass, there were often troops who would be brought to these places for training. Li Zongjiao and San Tong came to the first gathering place for origin beasts. If they wanted to reach Wudingxing Pass, there were other ways to go around it. However, that would take more time. It would be faster to go through it directly. In front of them was a vast bamboo forest. This bamboo forest was not made of simple bamboo. Other than some emerald green bamboo, there were also some dark red bamboo hidden in it. These bamboos were called blood bamboo. For some bear-type origin beasts, it could be said to be a delicacy. Because of this, in the blood bamboo forest, one could often see some thick stones by the side of the road. Once these stones appeared, it was best to leave immediately and walk as far away as possible. Because these stones were actually origin beasts that were dozing off. Once they sensed you approaching, they would definitely bite your neck off. Even the blood mane horse's footsteps slowed down as it slowly moved through the bamboo forest. In addition to the red color of the bamboo, the fallen bamboo leaves were also a faded red. Young master. Suddenly, San Tong stood in front of Li Zongjiao and said softly. Li Zongjiao also stopped in his tracks. In an instant, it was as if a gale had started to blow around the bamboo forest. Roar! It was as if a ferocious beast had woken up and sensed the two's arrival. After this angry roar, it was also a warning to Li Zongjiao and San Tong. It was telling them not to run. Chapter 286. This sudden warning caused the two of them to become alert. Something's not right, San Tong said in a low voice. He suddenly lay on the ground and pressed his ear to the ground as if he was listening to something. Oh no, at least 7 meta beasts are coming towards us. When San Tong stood up again, the shock on his face was indescribable. Boom! As soon as San Tong finished speaking, the ground in front of them suddenly trembled. 3 huge gray bears leaped from 3 different directions and landed in front of the two of them. When they saw this scene, San Tong was shocked. The violent shaking of the ground almost caused San Tong to lose his balance. His feet shook. However, the aura of the 3 gray bears was what really shocked him. Bloodthirsty silverback bears. The 3 gray bears were actually bloodthirsty silverback bears. Bloodthirsty silverback bears were the ultimate weapons of war among meta beasts. Their skin was thick and their defense was strong. At the same time, their recovery ability was very strong. As long as they didn't die in a battle, they could recover with a little time. Therefore, their survival rate was very high. In addition, their fighting style was extremely violent. It was like a storm, making it hard to breathe. This was the real terror. These bloodthirsty silverback bears were also extremely explosive. Once they identified a target, it was impossible for them to let go unless they trampled the target into pieces. However, the most important thing was that these bloodthirsty silverback bears rarely acted in groups. San Tong also stood with his saber in hand, staring at the 3 bloodthirsty silverback bears in front of him. The 3 bloodthirsty silverback bears seemed to have come together in an organization. They didn't look like ordinary meta beasts at all. There are still 4 meta beasts hiding in the dark. With my strength, I can at most stop 1 bloodthirsty silverback bear. Later, I'll stop 3 and young master will take the opportunity to leave. San Tong didn't expect to encounter such an unlucky thing. The 3 bloodthirsty silverback bears in front of him were enough to put him in a desperate situation. At most, they could escort Li Zongjiao to safety. If Li Zongjio could not escape, then both of them would die here. San Tong used to be a bloodstrike guard, so he had naturally undergone strict training to fulfill his duty. Thus, he couldn't just abandon Li Zongjio and leave. There's no need to leave. Li Zongjio glanced at the bloodthirsty silverback bears. These bloodthirsty silverback bears were self-proclaimed kings. If they encountered each other, there would be a fierce battle. After all, in the same territory, there could only be one king. If they encountered others of the same kind, they would be regarded as their enemies. The presence of these 3 bloodthirsty silverback bears was enough to explain the situation. These bloodthirsty silverback bears were being controlled by someone. Li Zongjio quickly figured it out. Thousand Beasts sect? Luoxia City was attacked by someone from the Thousand Beasts sect. Li Zongjio had already forgotten the name of that person. Li Zongjio didn't know how many people like that person had killed, so he didn't deliberately remember it. However, Li Zongjio had also studied Qingyuan Manor. After all, anyone who was related to Qingyuan Manor was Li Zongjio's enemy. The Thousand Beasts sect was naturally the first enemy to bear the brunt of this. The Northern Medicine Alliance was just a small medicine alliance. How could it have the shadow of an expert like the Thousand Beasts sect? Thus, there must be a matchmaker behind the scenes. This matchmaker was none other than Qingyuan Manor. It could be said that the Northern Medicine Alliance was basically under the control of Qingyuan Manor. Therefore, if they needed to do anything, they only needed to say a word. After the Northern Medicine Alliance was destroyed, the people from the Thousand Beasts sect had also gone to Luoxia City. It wasn't difficult for them to find Li Zongjio. Looking at the current situation, the people from the Thousand Beasts sect must have come looking for him. Are there any sects within 1,000 miles of this place? There are the Thousand Beasts sect, Great Yuan sect and Golden Fate sect within 1,000 miles of this place. Young master, do you mean that the people from the Thousand Beasts sect want to deal with us? San Tong's eyes suddenly flashed with astonishment. That's right, the Thousand Beasts sect and Qingyuan Manor have a lot of dealings. San Tong also remembered that he had followed the leader of Qingyuan Manor on a trip to the Thousand Beasts sect. The blood strike guards were trained to protect important people with their lives. At the same time, they were also a troop with strong executive ability. Because of this, even though the blood strike guards weren't very eye-catching and were frequently deployed, they were still in control of certain matters. Therefore, if a blood strike guard escaped, no matter the price, they had to be pursued to the end. If the bloodstrike guards escaped at the slightest provocation, Qingyuan Manor wouldn't be able to afford it. They had to let the bloodstrike guards know. It was impossible for them to escape. Only death would await them. Don't worry, they aren't looking for you. Li Zongjio replied nonchalantly. The 3 bloodthirsty silverback bears seemed to have been waiting for a long time. When they saw Li Zongjio, they immediately roared and charged at Li Zongjio. Only one of them attacked, while the other 2 stayed where they were and watched the battle as if they were cheering for Luo Yunyang. Li Zongjio was incomparably domineering, as if he had an indomitable will. Be careful, these bloodthirsty silverback bears are extremely strong. Their strength alone is comparable to a Sky Origin ancestor. San Tong couldn't help but shout when he saw Li Zongjio act so impulsively. However, it was already too late. Li Zongjio threw a punch at the bloodthirsty silverback bear. The bloodthirsty silverback bear also threw a punch at Li Zongjio like a giant hammer. Boom! Li Zongjio's arm snapped with a cracking sound. The bloodthirsty silverback bear roared. Although it had broken Li Zongjio's arm, its own arm had also been severely injured. At the same time, it kicked Li Zongjio and sent him flying. Boom! Li Zongjio flew back. San Tong hurriedly stepped forward and tried to help Li Zongjio up. However, Li Zongjio waved his hands and got up from the ground. Their target is me. I decide. I'll deal with them myself. Li Zongjio's interest was piqued. He swung his broken arm around a few times, and he was able to move it at will. San Tong's astonishing recovery ability was also worthy of praise. Looking at Li Zongjio's appearance, although he was in a sorry state, he was interested and wanted to continue fighting with him. His opponent could have broken his arm with a casual punch. There was such a big gap between them, Yet he still wanted to continue fighting. Even if he ran away now, no one would blame him. San Tong looked helplessly at Li Zongjio, who was rushing forward again. However, he did not dare to be careless. Instead, he stared at the situation around him very seriously. After all, there were still enemies in the dark. Is that all you've got? In fact, Li Zongjio had not only broken his arm, but also his ribs. However, in just a few breaths, he had basically recovered. Therefore, on the surface, there was nothing abnormal about it. In fact, if it had been an ordinary person, it would have been equivalent to a crippled person. It seemed to have understood Li Zongjio's provocation. The bloodthirsty silverback bear immediately stood up. Its bare claws easily drew 6 gullies on the ground. Seeing Li Zongjio rush forward again, the bloodthirsty silverback bear's bestial nature was completely aroused. It suddenly pounced on Li Zongjio. This time, it did not pounce. Li Zongjio's figure flashed and appeared behind the bloodthirsty silverback bear. He landed on the bloodthirsty silverback bear's back and grabbed a handful of its fur. Then, Li Zongjio's fists continuously landed on the bloodthirsty silverback bear's back. His fists did not stop falling. Similarly, a powerful force was reflected back. The bloodthirsty silverback bear's defense was quite terrifying. Bang bang bang. The bloodthirsty silverback bear suddenly rolled in a circle, trying to press Li Zongjio under its body. However, Li Zongjio was pressed under the black bear's body. He felt as if his internal organs were all shattered. Damn, practicing this ancient golden tyrant body art is really not easy. Li Zongjio spat out a mouthful of mud in the dark pit and then climbed up. The bloodthirsty silverback bear saw that Li Zongjio was still alive. Chapter 287. The bloodthirsty silverback bear flashed its claws. Suddenly, it roared, as if it wanted to dig Li Zongjio out. Li Zongjio endured the razor-sharp claws and climbed out of the pit without a care for his own safety. If not for the fact that he had to practice the ancient golden tyrant body technique, he would have killed the bloodthirsty silverback bear a long time ago. Killing such a small bear wasn't difficult for Li Zongjio at all. Li Zongjio's body recovered a couple of times amidst the repeated fractures. Finally, he crawled to his feet. When the bloodthirsty silverback bear attacked again, Li Zongjio saw the opportunity and punched the bloodthirsty silverback bear's neck. Suddenly, the bloodthirsty silverback bear's neck was broken by Li Zongjio's terrifying strength. Because after many exchanges, Li Zongjio also found that his body's recovery was too strong. The bloodthirsty silverback bear's attacks didn't have much effect on increasing his cultivation, other than causing him pain. This time, it exploded. Oh! The bloodthirsty silverback bear's body slowly tilted and fell to the ground with a bang, setting off a strong vibration. What? Seeing this scene, San Tong was shocked. From Li Zongjio's previous actions, he could see that Li Zongjio seemed to be using the bloodthirsty silverback bear to cultivate something. It also seemed like he was testing something with the bloodthirsty silverback bear. Seeing Li Zongjio easily take down the bloodthirsty silverback bear, San Tong's eyes were filled with shock. In fact, when he saw Li Zongjio fight with the bloodthirsty silverback bear, he already knew that Li Zongjio's strength was not simple. How many people could take a punch from a bloodthirsty silverback bear head-on? Even a Sky Origin Ancestor powerhouse wouldn't dare do that. Furthermore, Li Zongjio hadn't even used his Yuan power, which made him even more powerful. Given Li Zongjio's strength, killing a Sky Origin Ancestor powerhouse would be a piece of cake. It was no wonder that he had been able to kill Zhang Yu so easily. If Li Zongjio hadn't killed Zhang Yu, she wouldn't have had to live in exile. However, it wasn't a bad choice for her to choose another path. After the bloodthirsty silverback bear fell, it didn't get up again. A Yuan beast that had actually killed its bloodthirsty silverback bear. When San Tong heard this voice, he quickly jumped and chased after the bamboo forest. However, the bloodthirsty silverback bears. They had been watching the battle for a long time. Now that their comrade had been killed, they naturally went berserk. With a loud rumbling sound, 2 huge bodies chased after him. You overestimate yourself. Li Zongjio shook his arm and twisted his body. When the 2 bloodthirsty silverback bears chased after him, He instantly leaped into the air and chased after them. His body swayed in an instant. His speed made the bloodthirsty silverback bears' eyes blur. Then they realized that their backs seemed to be loaded with lead. The bodies of the two bears suddenly fell and collided with each other with a loud bang. This degree of impact made the bloodthirsty silverback bear growl. Obviously, the impact of this collision was quite strong. When its body fell, the bloodthirsty silverback bear found that its body could no longer move. "Damn it, my silverback bear is injured." In the bamboo forest, three figures quickly communicated. However, when Li Zongjio launched his counterattack, the three of them realized that something was wrong. The bloodthirsty silverback bear that had lost control fell to the ground, unable to move. All of a sudden, the three of them became alert. It seemed like someone was approaching them. "Die for me." San Tong found the three of them. He also understood why the four meta beasts didn't attack. It turned out that they stayed here to protect the three of them. Therefore, they didn't attack. Therefore, when San Tong discovered the three of them gathered here, his body leaped up and rushed toward them. He was immediately discovered by the meta beasts that were guarding the area. They saw a pitch-black poisonous snake crawling down from the bamboo. In an instant, it bit at San Tong's neck. San Tong's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He threw out the long knife in his hand. The poisonous snake bit the long knife and lost the opportunity to attack. After escaping, San Tong stepped on the bamboo beside him. In the next moment, his body flew out. Swoosh! San Tong was about to fly out and attack the 3,000 Beasts sect people. He discovered that the poisonous snake that had attacked him just now. He suddenly stretched his body out and immediately pulled San Tong to cultivate his qi. Not good. San Tong instantly realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. The strength of the snake coiled around his waist was so great that it was about to break his waist. Bang! A black poisonous snake. A level 4 meta beast, red giant prime snake. San Tong directly smashed to the ground. He didn't have a defensive technique like Li Zongjio's, so his internal organs were almost shattered. San Tong directly spat out a mouthful of blood. "A mere meta beast wants to kill us? To kill her?" An old man said indifferently. The one who did this was his meta beast, so naturally, it was enough to be arrogant. This was the red giant prime snake, which was extremely poisonous and good at trapping and killing enemies. San Tong was smashed until he almost fainted. The red giant prime snake was still wrapped around him. He couldn't move. At this moment, San Tong saw that the red giant prime snake's body was actually more than 10 feet long. Such a long snake, it seemed that he couldn't escape. The vision in front of him gradually turned dark. Just as San Tong's vision was about to turn blurry, he heard a soft sound. Then, the hand that was wrapped around his body suddenly loosened. This immediately made San Tong gasp for breath. When he opened his eyes, he saw a giant snake's head fall. This head was the red giant prime snake's head. San Tong's eyes widened when he saw this. He instantly realized who saved him. Who else could it be? The person who saved him was naturally Li Zongjio. She saw Li Zongjio standing at the same spot. In his hand was the blood-edged long knife that she had thrown out earlier. "What, just the three of you old men want to deal with me?" Li Zongjio saw the three figures standing in front of him. Then he looked around as if looking for the others. "Is there no one else in the Thousand Beasts sect?" Li Zongjio said indifferently. The three old men heard this and a cold light flashed in their eyes. Most importantly, one of them was unable to restrain his anger. He pointed at Li Zongjio and roared, "You killed my red giant prime snake." Chapter 288. The great red prime snake was something he had painstakingly nurtured for many years. It had already grown into a level 4 origin beast. If it could take another step forward, it would immediately become the great red prime snake king. Then, it would at least be an elder of the assembly within the sect. It would no longer be a deacon. So much so that they had to personally act to capture a brat like him. To them, this was truly a humiliation. "You deserve to die 1,000 times over." The deacon pointed at Li Zongjio as he bellowed. Li Zongjio was extremely disdainful when he heard this. Do you really think you can decide my life and death? Li Zongjio's gaze was extremely provocative and disdainful, as if he didn't think much of the three people before him. San Tong, who was lying on the ground, regained his consciousness. When he climbed to his feet, he looked at the corpse of the great red prime snake on the ground and a trace of shock flashed across his eyes. This was a grade 4 yuan beast. Yet it was killed so easily. Just how powerful was Li Zongjio? Go to the side and recuperate. Li Zongjio flicked an elixir pill over. San Tong took the pill that Li Zongjio had tossed over and took a closer look. He was immediately attracted by the aura of the elixir pill. This is a level 4 elixir pill. San Tong was so shocked that he almost couldn't breathe. The elixir pill in his hand was actually a level 4 elixir pill. Just this fact alone was enough to shock San Tong. He had only been following Li Zongjio for a few days, yet a healing elixir pill that he had casually given out was actually a level 4 elixir pill. The three people opposite him were also envious. When they saw the elixir pill, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The three of them were all origin ancestors. However, they had only just broken through to the first grade origin ancestor realm. Furthermore, they were beast tamers and had no way of refining their origin spirits. Therefore, compared to other origin masters, they had fewer tricks up their sleeves. However, they were able to nurture stronger origin beasts. The improvement of their own strength was also very important to them. They practiced the method of communicating with the meta beasts every day and night. Although they wanted to improve their cultivation, it wasn't that easy to break through. The fastest way to become stronger was to consume some pills. Only in this way would they be able to quickly break through and become even more powerful. It's the 3-flower vitality gathering pill. Brat, give me that pill. I can leave your corpse intact. When the three old men saw the elixir pill in San Tong's hand, their greed was immediately exposed. This grade 4 elixir pill was very expensive. If it was just one or two of them, there would naturally be no problem. However, cultivation required a huge amount of elixir pills. It was precisely because of this situation that they especially cherished the gains after this battle. Their mission this time was to kill Li Zongjio. In their opinion, this kind of revenge mission was not difficult or profitable, although they did not know why the three of them were sent here at the same time. After all, it was a sect mission and they couldn't shirk it. The three bloodthirsty silverback bears were in fact casually controlled because they were in the mood earlier. After a while, these bloodthirsty silverback bears would become disobedient. This kind of temporary control also had a time limit. If one wanted to control a meta beast, it would be extremely difficult. When they saw the 3-flower vitality gathering pill, they seemed to become more active. The first to make a move wasn't the three of them, but Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio sneered and rushed to the side of the bamboo forest. When one of them saw Li Zongjio's actions, he suddenly had a bad premonition. Oh no, my serious poisonous spider. The cry of the serious poisonous spider, which was the yuan beast he had reared, sounded in his mind. It turned out that the 8 legs of the serious poisonous spider were more than 20 meters long and towered over the bamboo forest. If one didn't get close, it would be difficult to discover that there were such spider legs in the bamboo forest. Li Zongjio's blood-rimmed long saber easily cut off the serious poisonous spider's joints. Bang! The serious poisonous spider landed on the ground and spat out a mouthful of venom at Li Zongjio. At the same time, it was accompanied by spider silk. If one was hit, they would definitely be soaked in the venom until their whole body rotted. No one knew how Li Zongjio did it. He actually appeared behind the serious poisonous spider at an extremely strange speed. With one slash, the serious poisonous spider lost its ability to move. Li Zongjio looked up and saw that the bamboo forest on both sides had been cut off by a pair of huge wings. He saw a huge bat rushing towards Li Zongjio. The momentum of its dive seemed to be able to split a mountain in half. At the same time, its wings were quite sharp. Good timing. Vajra bloodbat. Its wings were like Vajra blades, indestructible. At the same time, this bloodbat was good at sucking blood. Among the origin beasts, it was a terrifying killer. As for humans, its venom was completely useless. This was because once it bit down, your head would be gone. This Vajra blood bat was also the controller of the great red prime snake from before. Kill him! The elder roared angrily. The Vajra blood bat suddenly sped up and charged towards Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio faced the Vajra blood bat and leaped. When the Vajra blood bat opened its mouth, the blood-rimmed long saber in his hand had already slashed out. The saber landed. With a surge of origin energy, the Vajra blood bat was instantly split in half by Li Zongjio. There was even a trace of a burn mark on the wound. Not a single drop of blood dripped out. This was because Li Zongjio was in the process. He had used the obsidian fire. The obsidian fire had been infused into the saber technique and was naturally very threatening. The Vajra blood bat did not even know how it had died. In just half a minute, another 2 origin ancestor realm origin beasts had been killed. At this moment, the 3 of them finally understood why the sect had sent the 3 of them here. This guy's fighting power is terrifying. Summon the Manta beast immediately. Seeing this, the 3 of them did not have any objections. They immediately connected their powers and a terrifying power was released from their bodies. Boom! A gust of wind seemed to have appeared on the ground in front of them. When the 3 of them gathered their powers and rushed towards the sky, a figure descended from the sky. Like a meteorite, it fell towards the ground. What? The Manta beast! A half-divine beast with the Titan bloodline. Santong's eyes widened when he heard these people's words. He had never imagined that the 4th origin beast would be the Manta beast. It was no wonder that the 3 of them had to come together. The Manta beast had the Titan bloodline and was extremely difficult to tame. Therefore, it usually required 2 to 3 elders to summon it together. Boom! When the Manta beast landed on the ground, the entire blood bamboo forest shook violently as if there was a strong earthquake. Chapter 289. A creature with golden fur all over its body appeared in front of Li Zongjio. It looked like a gorilla, but its head was gradually becoming similar to a human's. Most importantly, its large eyes were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. The terrifying murderous aura contained in his eyes caused others to feel deep fear in their hearts. Manta beast? I don't even know how many of your father's behemoths I have killed. Li Zongjio immediately snorted. The Manta beast seemed to understand Li Zongjio's insult, and it immediately roared. Roar! Then, it waved its iron fist and smashed it towards Li Zongjio. There seemed to be a terrifying aura flowing on its fist. The power on its fist was bursting forth. Before it got close to Li Zongjio, a destructive aura gathered towards Li Zongjio. Under this aura, very few people could withstand it. As the Manta beast's huge fist landed, there was a loud boom, and a wave of energy on the ground quickly spread to Li Zongjio's feet. Li Zongjio's body shot out. However, as he chased after Li Zongjio, the shockwave swept over and rolled Li Zongjio's body to one side. The Manta beast's strength had already reached the level of a 3rd-grade origin ancestor. In terms of combat power, it was even more powerful than Chu Oren, the sect leader of the Fog Pill sect. Roar! The Manta beast roared again, and its body rose from the ground like a cannonball. It crossed its arms, forming a hammer, and smashed it towards Li Zongjio's body. Suddenly, Li Zongjio was like a rubber ball, and he was instantly sent flying. Bang! Li Zongjio landed heavily on the ground. A deep pit with a radius of nearly 10 feet had been blasted open on the ground. As expected of the Manta beast. Such combat power is indeed terrifying. At this moment, the 3 protectors were also extremely shocked. Although the Manta beast was usually trained, it seemed to have been angered today. Therefore, its combat strength was especially terrifying. Even Li Zongjio, who had attacked fiercely, was ruthlessly thrown to the ground. Young master, looking at the dust rising into the air, Santong could not help but worry. When Santong saw this, he couldn't help but worry for Li Zongjio. At this moment, Li Zongjio didn't know what was going on. The 3-flower soul-gathering pill in his hand was very likely to be a life-saving pill for Santong. If Li Zongjio needed it, Santong would give it to him without hesitation. However, Santong could also feel that Li Zhongjio's aura had not weakened at all. The manta beast, who was standing at the edge of the huge pit, wanted to see Li Zhongjio's corpse appear in front of him. However, when the dust settled, he realized that Li Zhongjio had already disappeared. Roar! The Mengtu beast immediately let out a cry of surprise from its throat. Where did that brat go? Could it be? Oh no! One of the old men suddenly realized something. When he raised his head again, he immediately saw a figure falling from a high place. In his hand was a pitch-black iron hammer. Mysterious lightning hammer. Bang! The old man's head instantly exploded like a watermelon, and brain matter splattered everywhere. It directly splashed onto the other two old men. The two of them were also shocked by the sudden change and immediately exclaimed, "Ah!" One of them opened his mouth wide. However, in the next second, the mysterious lightning hammer knocked out the entire row of teeth with a bang. The teeth that were knocked out turned into sharp hidden weapons as they rolled out of the mouth and pierced through the organs in the stomach. Three of the teeth whistled and directly rushed out and landed on the ground. Fresh blood continuously flowed out from the stomach. The strength of the iron hammer was really too great. You actually dared to kill them. The last old man was stunned and quickly distanced himself from Li Zhongjio. The last person was the one who had previously clamored to kill Li Zhongjio 10,000 times. In order to show his ruthlessness, Li Zhongjio was very willing to let him live in pain. When one was living in fear, one would know that every breath was so difficult. It would be very difficult for one to have the confidence to continue living. Your Mengtu beast seems to be waking up soon. Li Zhongjio said indifferently. After killing the two people, the Mengtu beast seemed to have a headache and did not continue to chase after Li Zhongjio. After all, the Mengtu beast needed 3 people to control it at the same time. If any of the 3 people had a problem, the Mengtu beast would most likely go out of control. Therefore, the Mengtu beast held its head and rolled into the deep pit. Looking at the state of the Mengtu beast, the old man knew that he was completely done for. Now, he did not know what he could do to move Li Zhongjio. Don't come over. You let me go. Let me go. I will give you whatever you want. Obviously, the old man was extremely afraid of death. How could the old man calm down when he saw the 2 living people's heads explode in front of him? Who would have thought that such a situation would occur after he had broken his teeth and swallowed them into his stomach? No one would have thought that he would have a lingering fear when he thought of his own teeth in the future. Who did you say deserved to die? Li Zhongjio said indifferently. He used his sleeve to wipe off the blood on the mysterious lightning hammer in his hand. He seemed to have the intention to stop. It's me. It's me. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. Please forgive me and let me go. We have no enmity between us. I am just working for the sect. Although the 2 metabeasts that he had painstakingly raised were dead, the lives of the metabeasts were not as important as his own life to him. If he died like this, he would rather use all the metabeasts in exchange for his own life. San Tong stood in the distance. He, who was familiar with all kinds of situations, could see that Li Zhongjio would not let him live. Li Zhongjio's strength was so terrifying that he could turn the tables in the hands of the 3 deacons of the Thousand Beasts sect. Such fighting strength was not something that an ordinary person could imagine. Moreover, the manta beast might not be Li Zhongjio's opponent. However, Li Zhongjio chose a simpler way to solve the problem. You don't need to die. Dying once is enough. Li Zhongjio helped the old man up from the ground. Then, he placed a palm on the old man's back. Instantly, a huge force sent the old man flying. A surge of origin energy sealed all the major acupuncture points in his body, causing the old man to be unable to use his origin energy. He could only let the origin energy take him away. The direction he was flying towards was the deep pit where the manta beast was rolling. Chapter 290. Although the manta beast had lost control, it still knew who had once controlled it in its current state. When the old man's figure fell, he subconsciously caught the old man. At that moment, the deacon of the Thousand Beasts sect was shivering. When he saw the manta beast's behavior, he couldn't help but feel excited. Could it be that he could still be saved? Thinking of this, the old man hurriedly took out an origin tool from his bosom and began to mutter. Then he slapped the montebeast. "Listen to my orders." Suddenly, a ray of light seemed to fly towards the montebeast. This was a temporary method of forceful control. It was enough for the montebeast to take him away. However, he seemed to have overestimated his own strength. With his strength, it was practically impossible for him to control the montebeast by himself. The montebeast's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a sinister smile. The old man in front of him was stunned. "Listen to my orders. Kneel down. Kneel down." The yuan weapon in his hand kept releasing rays of light. The Mengtu beast also slapped the origin tool away. At the same time, it twisted the old man's head off and threw it into its mouth like candy to chew. Such a bloody scene caused San Tong Xian to be alarmed. He wasn't worried about the scene of the Manta beast eating people. Instead, it would be a disaster if the Manta beast lost control and chased after them. A Manta beast that lost control would naturally be even more terrifying and return to its bestial nature. San Tong held the dagger in his hand tightly and stared at the Manta beast in front of him. At this moment, the Manta beast had eaten the last person. Although its body was still a little uncomfortable, it already knew that it had regained its freedom. Roar! The Manta beast roared as if it wanted to provoke San Tong. It glared at San Tong in front of it. Faced with the threat of a Sky Origin Ancestor-level Yuan beast, San Tong stood where he was and didn't dare to move. Just as the Manta beast couldn't help but attack, Li Zongjio walked out and stood in front of San Tong, staring at the Manta beast in front of him. The killing intent in the Mengtu beast's eyes shifted to the human in front of it. He saw that Li Zongjio's aura was stable and his eyes were calm. The Mengtu beast muttered in its heart. As a meta-beast that had reverted to its bestial nature, it naturally knew the threat level of this enemy. Some enemies were easy to provoke, while others were not. Once they were provoked, it was very likely that they would be threatened. Li Zongjio's calm gaze became a threat in front of the Manta beast. The Manta beast stared at Li Zongjio for a while before finally taking a small step back. There was no need for him to get entangled with Li Zongjio. He could just leave. There was no need for him to stay here any longer. The Manta beast immediately left, its figure disappearing. It did not live in this environment. If it stayed for too long, it would be in danger. The local kings would definitely come looking for it, and it would either fight or die in battle. That was the situation. Seeing the Manta beast leave, San Tong finally felt relieved. San Tong finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. If the Mengtu beast had gone berserk and wanted to eat someone, then between the two of them, Li Zongjio might have been eaten by the Mengtu beast. His gaze alone scared the Manta beast away. It could be seen how powerful Li Zongjio was. "Let's go," Li Zongjio said. The people from the Thousand Beasts sect actually dared to ambush them. When Li Zongjio was free, he would definitely make them pay the price. Since they came looking for him, it was very likely that they would send people to Luoxia City. When they entered the pass, they would need to send a letter back to see what was going on. The smell of blood permeated the air, and with so many restless auras, it was very likely to attract other meta-beasts. Hence, they had to leave this place. At this moment, outside Luoxia City, a black-clothed old man was riding a giant scarlet bird as he flew across the sky. He was heading straight for Luoxia City. However, before he could get close to Luoxia City, he was stopped by someone. Swoosh! A figure landed on the back of the bird and stared at the black-clothed old man in front of him. The black-clothed old man was also shocked by the appearance of this person. It was the first time he had seen such a powerful Qinggong. "This is not a place for you to come," Feng Qingyu said indifferently. Her body was as light as a swallow. Even the giant bird did not sense Feng Qingyu's appearance. If the black-clothed elder did not see it with his own eyes, he would not dare to believe that there was an additional figure in front of him. "How dare you ask me to leave? It seems like you don't know who I am." Thousand Beasts Sect's second deacon, Yao Quan. Feng Qingyu said indifferently. At this moment, the black-clothed elder's face finally changed. His eyes suddenly became gloomy. Are you from Luoxia City?" I am from Thousand Horse City. We know why you are here. Go back and tell your sect master that you can't touch Luoxia City. After Feng Qingyu finished speaking, the black-clothed elder lowered his head to look. There were dozens of horses running wildly under the ground. Ta-da! They were so fast that they were able to keep up with the speed of the flying bird. When he lifted his head again, Feng Qingyu had already soared into the sky. Then, a white horse with a pair of wings descended from the sky and caught Feng Qingyu. Thousand Horse City's Cloud Galloping Horse. The Cloud Galloping Horse was the symbol of Thousand Horse City. It was also the ultimate power of Thousand Horse City. The Cloud Galloping Horse was a unique meta beast in Thousand Horse City. It was fast and had great endurance. Moreover, it was very obedient and had a pair of wings on its back. That was its most powerful point. When he saw the Cloud Galloping Horse and the cavalry below, Yao Quan quickly ordered the giant bird to stop. If he didn't stop, he would probably collide with these people if he took another step forward. A bloody battle was inevitable. Sorry for offending you. Yao Quan cupped his hands and said. He was here to destroy the Li family and teach them a lesson. However, the people of Thousand Horse City blocked him. It was not that simple. However, how did the people of Thousand Horse City get together with the people of Luoxia City? One should know that no forces dared to offend Thousand Horse City. Under normal circumstances, when one heard the name of Thousand Horse City, it was best to turn around and leave. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Feng Qingyu looked at Yao Quan, who was leaving, and frowned slightly. The people of Thousand Beast Sect were here. This was going to be interesting. However, the Thousand Beast Sect was nothing in Thousand Horse City's eyes. How many people did that kid offend outside? Sigh. Feng Qingyu gritted her teeth in anger when she thought of the kid who left without saying goodbye. She wanted to catch Li Zongjiu and give him a good beating. Chapter 291. Half an hour after Li Zongjiu and the others left, a group of people arrived. The blood-robed guards, who had been chasing after them, finally arrived. The 4 bronze blood-strike guards carefully examined the wounds on the corpses. Decisive and decisive. There are signs of ferocious beast activity in the surroundings. It seems like the members of the Thousand Beast Sect are all dead. One of the blood-strike guards said in a deep voice. The corpses were clearly placed here. However, the 3 of them were experts who had the opportunity to become elders in the Thousand Beast Sect in the next few years. If he was lucky, he might even be able to become a Grand Elder. However, they had never imagined that these people would appear. They couldn't even deal with a brat. This wasn't the main point. The main point was that they didn't even have the chance to escape. Although these beast tamers weren't strong, the various types of origin beasts were still a huge threat when they worked together. Furthermore, these experienced beasts shouldn't be so weak that they couldn't even protect their own lives. The 4 bronze blood-strike guard furrowed his brows as he thought about this. I didn't expect this traitor to be together with that wanted criminal. Wu Ding Sheng Pass is right in front of us. They must have already entered the pass. Inform the guards inside the pass. We must capture them inside the pass. Sir. 2 Qinggong experts immediately rushed in the direction of Wuding Sheng Pass. Li Zongjiu and San Tong had already entered the pass. With the reporting document in Li Zongjiu's hands and the presence of the Blood Mane Horse, Wuding Sheng Pass had no reason to stop Li Zongjiu. The triple bronze blood strike guards naturally had their own exclusive document. Not only were they able to pass through Wuding Sheng Pass, they were also able to pass through many other places without obstruction. The Qingyuan Manor token in his hands was enough to prove everything. The killing intent of the people who passed through Wuding Sheng Pass was relatively heavy. Just staring at these people for a while was enough to cause a bloody disaster. Although they generally wouldn't make a move in the city, once you leave the city, they might tail you. If you wanted to hide in the city, you would first have to be able to afford it. Furthermore, if you didn't have a valid reason, you weren't allowed to stay in the pass for too long. Who knows if you're here to spy on them? After all, there are troops stationed at the pass, as well as a lot of firearms and provisions. They often transport important things. If you stay in the pass, you will have to pay them back. In this pass, There were actually people who were responsible for your every move. You couldn't tell how many people were watching you. For such an important city, it didn't matter if you usually laughed and joked around. However, if something happened, then you would really enjoy the feeling of an impending disaster. We've used up a lot of energy today. Let's stay in the pass. I'll go to the relay. Li Zhan said. Eat the pill. With your current cultivation, you can die at any moment. The two of them found an inn and asked for 2 rooms right next to each other. After giving some instructions, Li Zhongjio left alone. San Tong was extremely moved by Li Zhongjio's trust in him. Although she had sided with Li Zhongjio, if she wanted to harm Li Zhongjio, she would be a huge threat to Li Zhongjio. She might even leak his location and information, which would attract a large number of Bloodstrike guards. He would bring his head back to receive a reward. That way, he wouldn't have to be chased by the Bloodstrike guards. However, San Tong had long since grown tired of the Bloodstrike guards' lifestyle and actions. The Bloodstrike guards' internal strife hadn't been going on for a day or two. Coupled with the Qingyuan Manor's actions, San Tong couldn't stand it any longer. As long as I can live, I'll risk my life for you. San Tong was already prepared to die the moment he chose to escape. Now, he had to survive for Li Zhongjio. After all, Li Zhongjio had done her a great favor. She had to repay him. Commander's office. There were 2 commanders in Wooding Victory Pass. They were in charge of the north and south gates respectively. Li Zhongjio and the others had to enter through the south gate and leave through the north gate. No matter who they were, they could only leave through these 2 gates. The commander of the south gate was Xue Zhaoan. He had 30,000 soldiers and 50,000 in reserve. These 80,000 soldiers were all under Xue Zhaoyan's management. Half of the southern pass had to listen to Xue Zhaoyan's whims. Within this area, he wielded great power and could cover the sky with one hand. At this moment, the person who could cover half the sky of Wooding Victory Pass with one hand. He was reading a document in his hand. Sir, someone from Qingyuan Manor requests an audience. Even the high and mighty Qingyuan Villa would have to make a report when they arrived here. No matter how powerful they were, they could not make any waves in Wooding Victory Pass. After all, this was the military stronghold of the dynasty. It was not a place for them to joke around. Qingyuan Manor is thousands of miles away from us. What's there to see? I won't see him. Xue Zhaotian said indifferently. Looking at the contents of the document in his hand, he could not help but frown. Insect disaster in Shiding village? Mutated locusts slaughtered a village. 27 people have died. It's so serious. Where did this insect disaster come from? In the vicinity of Wudingsheng Pass, there were close to 40 to 50 villages of various sizes. The existence of these villages was for the purpose of growing food. Otherwise, with so many soldiers stationed in the pass, just the amount of rice that would be consumed every day would be unimaginable. These villages were naturally under the protection of Wooding Victory Pass. Now that a village had reported such a strange incident, of course, they had to be more careful. Otherwise, if the insect disaster spread to other places, it would cause great damage. For Xue Zhaoan, this was the most important thing. No matter who came to find him, his attitude was the same. There was no need to think too much. After being directly rejected by Xue Zhaotian, the 4 bronze blood-robe guard and the others entered the pass and heard the news. They were so angry that they clapped their hands. These boorish soldiers actually dared to make things difficult for Qingyuan Villa. This was the first time that the 4 bronze blood-robed guards had been defeated. In other places, the name of Qingyuan Manor was even more useful than the name of the king of Saint Flame Dynasty. If you said that you were an emperor, people might not necessarily believe you. However, if you said that you were a member of Qingyuan Manor, the door would be opened in a matter of minutes and respectfully welcomed you in. After all, Qingyuan Manor was ruthless. For so many years, Qingyuan Manor had killed many people to silence them. It was because of this that everyone was afraid of Qingyuan Manor. But in Wooding Victory Pass, what kind of fierce people had they not seen before? If you have the ability, just bring it on. The 30,000 regular soldiers of the dynasty were here. They were not joking. They would let you come in alive, but not leave alive. The news of the blood robe guard entering the city also reached Shui Zhaoyan's ears. After all, these people were a highly threatening group. Therefore, he had to keep an eye on them and not let anything happen. Send people to keep a close eye on these people. If they dare to make a move in the city, arrest them all. Also, who are they looking for? Shui Zhaodan asked. As half of the sky in this city, of course, he had to control everything in his hands. Otherwise, if these people messed around and he acted like an ignorant child, wouldn't people laugh their teeth off if word got out? They are looking for a defected blood robe guard and a young man from Thousand Horse City. This young man is heading to Sacred Flame Imperial City to participate in the Heavenly Star Medicine Manners assessment. A candidate? A defected blood robe guard? This kid is participating in the Heavenly Star Medicine Manners assessment? Then he should be pretty good. Call him over. Be polite. Shui Zhaotian thought that if this kid was participating in the Heavenly Star Medicine Manners assessment, then he would definitely know how to refine pills. He would capture him and give him a try. Sir. Chapter 292. Li Zongjio wrote a letter and returned to Luoxia City. However, he had a vague feeling that he was being watched by someone. He turned around and looked around. Suddenly, he saw a few figures in front of him, who seemed to be dodging him. When he saw Li Zongjio's gaze, it was obvious that they were hiding themselves. No, the other one is watching them? Li Zongjio realized that 4 people were watching him from 4 different directions. The 5th person was monitoring the 4 people. He was obviously from another faction. Although Li Zongjio didn't know who the other party was, since they had come knocking on his door, there was no need to be polite. He would use their heads to let them know that they had provoked someone they shouldn't have. Li Zongjio didn't bat an eyelid. Although this was his first time here, after turning left and right, he walked into a secluded alley. Generally speaking, if there were no witnesses in this kind of alley, even if someone killed you, they wouldn't be able to find the murderer. There wouldn't even be any traces left. Even if someone found the murderer, they could just say that they didn't do it. Dead men tell no tales. After finding this place, the path was already blocked. There was no way to leave. The 4 blood strike guards immediately walked out. This alley was connected to both ends. However, the 2 people in front and behind had trapped Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio couldn't hold back the long blade in his hand. He glanced at the blood-edged blades in their hands. They were exactly the same as the one in Santong's hands. So it's you pieces of trash. Only 4 of you came? Li Zongjio said indifferently as he clasped his hands behind his back. Of course, it wasn't just 4 people. These 4 people had sealed off Li Zongjio's escape route, trapping Li Zongjio in this place. At the same time, they had summoned a large army. Dozens of figures rushed over from all directions. Several figures jumped up and down in the alley. One of them actually had the copper thread of his junior sister embroidered on the hilt of his blade. This was a 4 bronze-ranked blood-robed guard. Li Zongjio squinted his eyes and looked at them for a while. They weren't masked, but the hats they wore were a little low, so he couldn't see their faces clearly. Now that there are so many people, are you satisfied? The 4 bronze blood-robed guard raised his head and stared at Li Zongjio. There was a long scar on his face that extended from his forehead to his neck. At first glance, it was indeed quite frightening. They were completely surrounded by the blood strike guards. The only way to leave this place was to carve out a bloody path. Li Zongjio took out his Thunder Profound Hammer. This Thunder Profound Hammer was not his, he just snatched it. Attack! The 4 bronze-ranked blood-robed guards snorted coldly. Everyone pulled out their blood-rimmed sabers. However, at this moment, a series of heavy footsteps could be heard. Knock them out of my way. If anyone dares to resist, kill them. Suddenly, a series of collisions came from the back of the crowd. A group of people in iron armor rushed out and pinned the person they bumped into against the wall. The blood strike guards were pushed down one after another. Originally, they could have fought back, but after seeing what they were wearing, they gave up on attacking. City guards. They were actually city guards. If they attacked the city guards in this pass, They would be treated as rebels and dealt with immediately. When the time came, no matter how powerful they would not let them out so quickly. Furthermore, who knew if they would be protected by someone who wanted to protect them? The four bronze blood-robed guards' eyes widened when he saw the city guards appear. What was going on? Where did these people come from? How dare you show your weapons in my territory? Immediately, a commander wearing dark gray armor stepped forward and snatched the saber from the blood-robed guard's hand. He threw the saber to the ground and pressed the blood-robed guard and the blood-robed guard against the wall. How dare you? Don't you know who I am? The four bronze blood-robed guard had never imagined that something like this would happen. Did the city guards take advantage of this opportunity to catch all of them in one fell swoop? Logically speaking, this shouldn't have happened. They had never encountered such a situation anywhere else. Damn it! Are you a god? Handcuff him! Immediately, the thick and heavy dark steel shackles flew towards the body of the four bronze-ranked blood-strike guard and dragged him away without any explanation. The blood-robed guards, who had been overbearing just a moment ago, were all taken down by the city guards in the blink of an eye. The situation had changed so quickly that even Li Zongjio hadn't expected it. Even Li Zongjio didn't understand why these city guards would help him. If it was a fight between the two sides, then the city guards wouldn't help him. If there had been a brawl, Li Zongjio would have been arrested. However, the city guards clearly had no intention of calling out to Li Zongjio. By the time everyone had been taken away, the man in dark gray armor walked over to Li Zongjio. He cupped his fists in salute to Li Zongjio. I am the second commander of the Southern Military Headquarters, Zhao Cheng. My lord invites you to meet him at his residence. At the military headquarters, this man was the leader of the city guards. In the past, Li Zongjio wouldn't have bothered looking at these people if they had approached him like this. If they wanted to meet him, they would have had to ask their boss to come find him. However, these people's attitude was very good. They had even helped him get rid of the obstacles by capturing the blood-robed guards. They had helped Li Zongjio resolve this problem, so Li Zongjio wouldn't take advantage of them. Lead the way. Zhao Cheng couldn't help but glance at Li Zongjio, who was standing before him. Despite the presence of so many armored soldiers, Luo Yunyang didn't seem the least bit afraid. His aura didn't change at all. These soldiers weren't rookies. They were all experienced soldiers who had been on the battlefield before. If one wasn't used to grand occasions, one's imposing manner would automatically be overshadowed when facing these soldiers. The fact that Li Zongjio was able to remain so calm and composed wasn't something an ordinary young man could do. Even if one wanted to pretend, they wouldn't be able to do so. I'm afraid that even if there were 10 times more people today, this young man wouldn't waver, Zhao Cheng thought. Even if the person who had come today hadn't been him, the city guards wouldn't have been able to stop Luo Yunyang. The blood-robed guards wouldn't have been able to stop him. Withdraw! The group of people returned to the military headquarters in a grandiose manner. The blood-robed guards hadn't made things too difficult for them. They had only been outside to teach them a profound lesson. Otherwise, these people would have thought that this was an ordinary city. Anyone who dared to act arrogantly in Wooding Victory Pass would be beaten down. Zhao Cheng led Li Zongjio into the large hall. Sir, Li Zongjio has been brought here. Okay, you can go down first. Bring the village chief of Shiding village here too. Yes, sir. Zhao Cheng withdrew. Shui Zhaotian raised his head and looked at Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio didn't stand on ceremony. He just sat down on a chair without the slightest bit of courtesy. What's the matter? Chapter 293. Such a daring person was either a fool or someone with real ability. Shui Zhaoyan sized up Li Zongjio and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Arrogant enough. Take a look. Shui Zhaotian threw the scrolls on the table to Li Zongjio. Shui Zhaotian wanted to let Li Zongjio do whatever he wanted. Before he knew his strength, Shui Zhaotian would let him be arrogant. If Li Zongjio did not have the corresponding ability, then Shui Zhaotian would let him know how powerful he was. Shui Zhaotian liked this kind of straightforward character very much. Insect plague? Do you have samples of those insects? Li Zongjio looked at the scrolls in his hand and frowned after reading them. In addition to the previous situation, this sudden insect plague seemed to have been premeditated. Therefore, Li Zongjio guessed that it was very likely related to those people. Southern Xinjiang poison sect. Last time, Li Zongjio had only killed a small fry. Now, these people from the southern borders poison cult were truly on the move. These people from the poison sect were obviously not strong, but they could control these insects with ease. Moreover, even a small insect could cause a great disaster. Back then, Li Zongjio directly went to ask Ninsheng for help because of the small blood poison insect. This showed how difficult it was to deal with these insects. Now that these insects had made a comeback on such a large scale, Li Zongjio had to stop them because it was very likely that they would be overrun. However, before he saw it, Li Zongjio could not be sure. After all, there were many reasons that could cause this insect plague. No, but their village chief will be here soon. The village chief was not invited by them. Instead, he rushed to the pass overnight. When the incident happened, Xue Zhaotian had already sent a small team to investigate the situation. No matter what, the safety of the remaining people was the most important thing. Sir, the village chief of Shiding village is here. Zhao Jie brought an old man over. There were some stains on the old man's body and he looked a little flustered. When he saw Xue Zhaotian, he was very excited and immediately pounced on Xue Zhaotian. How dare you? Zhao Kuang was about to stop him, but Xue Zhaotian waved his hand, indicating that it was fine. Sir, you must save our village. Get up first. Xue Zhaotian wanted to help the old man up, but the old man grabbed his hands. Xue Zhaotian's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't attack the old man directly. He believed in his own strength. This old man couldn't hurt him so easily, no matter what method he used. However, at this moment, Li Zongjio had already made his move. Li Zongjio stepped forward. He sent the old man flying with a single palm strike. While rolling on the ground, Li Zongjio flicked his finger and a black flame shot towards the old man on the ground. Seeing Li Zongjio's action, Xue Zhaotian was enraged. No matter what, these people were their bread and butter. How could he hurt them? If a soldier didn't care about the people, then what was the use of him? However, before the order to capture Li Zongjio could come out of his mouth, he saw the old man's body gradually burning. Hundreds of black beetles emerged from the old man's body. These beetles frantically fled, trying to put out the flames on their bodies. For these insects, they were most afraid of these terrifying flames. However, no matter where they ran, there was no way to put out the flames. In the end, they were burned to ashes. Zhao Jie held his sword and stood in front of Xue Zhaotian. Although Xue Zhaotian's strength was likely to be stronger than Zhao Jie's, he still had to fulfill his duty as a guard. The two of them watched as so many insects jumped out of the village chief's body. This scene clearly shocked them. Impossible. The village chief definitely didn't die before. If he didn't die, where did these insects come from? Zhao Jie suddenly said. Thinking about it carefully, it was a little scary. How could such a thing happen? These are southern border insects. Li Zongjio said. At this moment, a black beetle ran towards Li Zongjio's feet. Then, Li Zongjio caught the insect, and the flames on its body gradually extinguished. He carefully observed it for a while. He found that these insects were a type of poisonous insect from the southern border poison sect. They were called blood beetles. They lived on blood. They were born with tough armor. If they had enough blood to grow, their bodies would grow bigger and bigger. In the end, they would be able to swallow an entire cow. It was that terrifying. It sounded ordinary, but that was only if there were only one or two of them. What if there were thousands or tens of thousands of them? It would become a real army of blood beetles. Even if they ate the walls of Wudingsheng Pass, it would only take a few minutes. These are blood beetles. They live in the blood. Looks like the people in this village are all dead. Li Zongjio said indifferently. He handed the insect over to Xue Zhaotian. Xue Zhaotian took the insect. Although there was a burnt smell, he could see that the insect was still kicking its legs. Obviously, it wanted to escape from his hands. It had such a tenacious vitality. It's the legendary goo. Who put the goo? I'm going to destroy him. Let's burn the village first. Once these insects leave the human body, they must find fresh blood and flesh within an hour. Only with fresh blood can they continue to live. Li Zongjio said indifferently. Even though he was used to seeing death in his previous life, he was still very unhappy when such a thing happened. Killing countless people did not mean that he killed the innocent. The people Li Zongjio killed were all his enemies. They deserved to die. There were also some people he did not like. Under some circumstances, even Li Zongjio could not bear to kill them. Therefore, Li Zongjio hated this kind of situation where ordinary villagers were killed. However, the poison sect of Nanjiang was very secretive. It was not easy to find them. Moreover, these people liked to hide in the dark. If one was not familiar with them, or if they came to find them personally, it would be very difficult to find them. If they were hiding in the city, it would be easy to find them. However, if they were hiding in the mountains, one would have to search inch by inch to find them. How do you know so much about these insects? Shui Zhaotian stared at Li Zongjio. He seemed to want to find a flaw in Li Zongjio's body. Just read more books. Li Zongjio waved his hand and said, I've already told you the method. If you don't stop it in time, it will become a disaster. Hurry up. After saying that, Li Zongjio turned and left. His arrogance shocked Shui Zhaoan and Shui Zhaoun. My lord, should we capture him and bring him back? Zhao Zhao did not expect that things would turn out like this. That Li Zongjio actually dared to swagger away just like that, as if he didn't put them in his eyes. What does he think this military residence is? He can come and go as he pleases. No need. Shui Zhaotian looked at the departing Li Zongjio. Where did you say this kid came from? Shui Zhaonan looked at Zhao Zhao. His hometown is Luoxia City, but he rides a red-maned horse from Thousand Horse City. It's related to Thousand Horse City. I haven't seen such an imposing young man in a long time. Shui Zhaotian couldn't help but comment. He was obviously amazed by Li Zongjio's performance. As long as Li Zongjio did not do anything to endanger Wuding Xingguan, Shui Zhaotian would not cause trouble for Li Zongjio. As for the matter of dispelling the insect plague, it was their job to begin with. Li Zongjio had only given them a few pointers because they had captured the Bloodstrike Guards. Gather all the soldiers with fire elemental energy and lead them to Shiding village immediately. You will be in charge of leading the team and watch over the Bloodstrike Guards. Lock them up for half a month before letting them go. Yes, sir. Although Zhao Zhao did not understand why the Bloodstrike Guards had to be locked up for such a long time, he had to follow the orders. Li Zongjio returned to the inn. He happened to see San Tong waiting in the hall. San Tong was pleasantly surprised when he saw Li Zongjio return. Young master. Chapter 294. As for what happened in the afternoon, Li Zongjio didn't share it with San Tong. After all, San Tong was not his friend, and there was no need to talk about these things as if nothing had happened. After resting for the night, Li Zongjio prepared some food and wine. They set off early the next day. Li Zongjio had thought that the Bloodstrike Guards would catch up with them early. However, he hadn't discovered any traces of them, which surprised Li Zongjio. It seemed like their days in the city hadn't been very carefree. Whatever happened to them had nothing to do with Li Zongjio. When they reached Sacred Flame City, they wouldn't have to worry about being hunted down anymore. After all, Sacred Flame City wasn't a place to joke around. If anyone dared to cause trouble in Sacred Flame City, their entire family would be exterminated in a matter of minutes. They wouldn't even have time to blink. 3 days later, Sacred Flame City was right in front of them. Now that they had arrived, they could finally have a good rest in the city. During the past 3 days, they hadn't encountered any problems. Only a few lost origin beasts would appear occasionally and cause trouble. However, they were all chased away by Li Zongjio and the others in the end. San Tong, on the other hand, had felt a little strange over the past 2 days. According to the Bloodstrike Guard style, they should have suffered a fierce attack before arriving at Sacred Flame City. Logically speaking, they should have caught up with them very quickly. However, they hadn't even seen a shadow of the Bloodstrike Guards during the past few days. This was very strange. Could they have gone the wrong way? Or perhaps there was an even bigger problem. Did they not have enough manpower? That was the only thing San Tong could think of right now. After all, he couldn't guess what the reason was. Inside Wuding Sheng Pass, the dozens of blood-strike guards in the prison cells were all sitting in a lotus position, feeling rather gloomy. This was all because of the calamity of being imprisoned. They had never imagined that they would be detained in the prison cells just because they had flashed their weapons. Even the people outside couldn't do anything about it. It was simply watertight. Nothing made sense. The military headquarters at Wuding Xingguan refused to let him go. Damn it. Once I get out, I'll definitely make this pair of bastards die without a burial ground. This is no longer a simple mission. It's now a personal grudge. The four bronze blood-robed guards wanted nothing more than to tear down the prison cell and rush out to tear Li Zongjio and the others to pieces. But he didn't have such an opportunity. Counting the time, they should have reached Holy Flame City by now. Once they reached the Holy Yen City, no matter how powerful the Qingyuan Villa was, they would not be able to do anything. Who would dare to kill people in the Holy Yen City? Even if it was a well-planned trap, they wouldn't dare to act recklessly. If there was even the slightest bit of abnormality, they would directly capture the person. In front of Holy Flame City, Li Zongjio and San Tong rode their horses side by side. They looked at the majestic city before them. This sacred flame city was like a huge square seal. It was engraved here and guarded the four directions. The luck from the 4 seas and 8 wastelands under the heavens continuously gathered towards Holy Flame City. This was the reason why the Shengyan dynasty was so powerful and imposing. The sacred flame city alone was more than 10 times the size of an ordinary second-grade city. It could accommodate more than 10 million people. There were no less than 10 primeval forests that were enclosed within the city. There was a main city area and a forest area. Only the capital city had such a domineering aura to turn some terrifying elemental beast forests into their own backyard. The city gate of the sacred flame city was also grand. No matter which city gate it was, there were a total of 8 doors. Moreover, there was no distinction between high and low. Every day, one could see a long queue at the city gate. Fortunately, the efficiency of the front line was high. Basically, those who could make it here could be ignored by the Sacred Flame City's investigation methods. The two of them queued up to enter the city. The front and back of the city were packed with people. Like most places, the various large families in the Sacred Flame City were also developing with each other. The truly large clans were the few clans that held power within the empire. These people had to be kept in mind that they could not be offended at all costs. At the same time, there were also some princes here. In short, the relationship between the various factions in the city was very complicated. If one was not careful, one would fall into the abyss of eternal damnation. However, if one stood on the right side, one's meteoric rise would be just around the corner. Therefore, it was very likely that one could obtain a large pile of gold here. However, it was also possible that one would be thrown into a septic tank in the blink of an eye. Although private fights and vendettas were not allowed in the Sacred Flame City, there were some unexpected situations, such as a house accidentally catching fire, or a drunk person accidentally falling into a pool of water and drowning to death. Similar things happened frequently, so it was not strange at all. Where did you come from? The guards stopped Li Zongjio and conducted a simple interrogation. I am an examinee from the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Li Zongjio handed over the examination certificate in his hand. The information regarding Li Zongjio was written clearly on the certificate. When the guard heard this, he took the certificate and took a look. In the end, the way he looked at Li Zongjio changed. You are from the Luoxia city. I wish you good results. Go on in. Li Zongjio also felt that strength was the most important thing in the face of time. Back then, he had been able to come and go as he pleased in the Shengyan dynasty. He had even been able to enter the chambers of the emperor's concubines easily, let alone the city gates. It had been as easy as entering and exiting his own house. He had never expected that he would be in such a state when he returned. The dignified evil lord of his generation had actually been interrogated by a small city guard. Fortunately, the identity certificate in his hand had enough weight. Therefore, when he took it out, he was not put in a difficult position. At the same time, he was treated with more respect. San Tong followed beside Li Zongjio, so he naturally entered together with him. Not long after the two of them entered, a voice suddenly rang out behind them. "Hey, how are you? You are also an examinee from the Dingkuan province." "Me too. I am from the Kuan Castle." A cheerful person with a slightly dark complexion could be seen. However, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. This was a confidence that came from the bottom of his heart. The Kuan Castle? Li Zongjio couldn't help but frown when he heard this name. This was because this was a very famous city. So much so that the history of the Kuan Castle was even longer than the history of the Sacred Flame City. Furthermore, the Kuan Castle was different from the other cities. Although it had been included in the Qingyan dynasty's sphere of influence, the Kuan Castle's city lord was still chosen by the city's headquarters. This gave off a sense of independence. However, after many years of assimilation, the Kuan Castle had gradually integrated into the Qingyan dynasty. There was also quite a bit of interaction between them. Chapter 295. However, someone once said that the power of Kuan Castle was even stronger than that of Holy Flame City. In his previous life, Li Zongjio had also visited Kuan Castle. He discovered that Kuan Castle had a long history and had many veteran experts. However, in reality, the true core strength was not as many as that of Holy Flame City. In the long run, if Kuan Castle continued to remain stagnant, it would be crushed by Holy Flame City sooner or later. Now, Kuan Castle was smart. It allowed people to come and learn. It allowed some of the elite disciples in the city to come and learn the essence of Holy Flame City. Those who could walk out of Kuan Castle were all top-notch geniuses. However, the people of Kuan Castle did not think that the world belonged to Holy Flame City. They even had the feeling that they were independent kings. However, their current strength was not enough. After about 50 years, even the strength of some of the first-rate cities in Holy Flame City would surpass Kuan Castle. Li Zongjio glanced at the young man in front of him. He did not show any attitude. He turned around and left with San Tong. Li Zongjio did not say anything. San Tong naturally did not show any attitude. Not everyone could be friends with Li Zongjio. "Hey, why are you leaving?" "I'm Kuan Erasure. Remember, I'll see you during the exam." Kuan Erasure? When Li Zongjio heard this name, he could not help but be stunned. He turned around and said to Kuan Erasure, "You're Kuan Erasure?" Kuan Erasure nodded when he heard this. "That's right. Have you heard of my name?" Seeing the shock on Li Zongjio's face, which even seemed to be interested in him, he could not help but be moved. He did not expect that his name had already spread here. "Ah." Li Zongjio only sneered. Then he turned around and left. Kuan Arashi's name exploded in this era in his previous life. It could be said that he was a legendary figure among the younger generation. At the beginning, when he walked out of Kuan Castle, he directly killed his way out of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manners exam and shocked everyone. He directly obtained first place. It was even said that he crushed an extremely talented princess from the Qingyan dynasty. Therefore, it became a hot topic. At that time, Kuan Castle's attitude was arrogant and extremely unconsciously. Therefore, Kuan Arashi's ending was extremely miserable. Although Kuan Arashi's ambition was great and he wanted to become the hero of Kuan Castle, in the end, he was too arrogant and he directly became a sacrifice. He could be considered a rather pitiful person. However, Kuan Erasure at that time had no other choice. He came with the belief of Kuan Castle. He wanted to make Kuan Castle once again become a dazzling existence on this continent. However, this great ambition of his was not successful. However, it could be considered that he had already succeeded by half. At the very least, in the eyes of many people, Kuan Erasure could be considered as a relatively successful person. At that time, Li Zongjio also greatly admired Kuan Erasure. With the appearance of such a genius, in the next 20 years, he could become the mainstay of this continent and become a person standing at the peak. However, it was a pity. In this life, Li Zongjio did not think of anything else. He only wanted to properly protect Luoxia City. As for the other matters, he temporarily blocked them. Just doing the current matters was enough for Li Zongjio to be busy. The examination will start in 5 days. Let's find an inn to stay in first. In addition, I want to make a trip to the 5 Elements Yuan Tower. Yes, young master. The two of them found a relatively ordinary inn to stay in. Of course, this ordinary inn was not ordinary at all. In this small city, it could be considered as a top-notch existence. There were also many schools and martial halls in the surroundings. After all, the Xingyan dynasty's culture was martial arts. If one did not know a move or two, even if one went to the field, he would be looked down upon by others. 5 Elements Yuan Tower. It was a training building that was specially set up with a 5 Elements Yuan Qi array. It was specially set up for people to use to break through realms. If one's cultivation had reached a bottleneck that had been accumulating for many years and was preparing to break through at this moment, but was just a step away, the 5 Elements Yuan Tower would be very useful. The big boss behind the 5 Elements Yuan Tower had a great influence in the Xingyan dynasty. They even had a great background with the Imperial Martial Pavilion. Moreover, those who could set up the 5 Elements Yuan Qi array were extremely powerful Yuan Qi masters. The reason why Li Zongjio wanted to find this place was because he wanted to take out the boundless stone in his hands. These days, Li Zongjio had been training his mental energy almost all the time. With Li Zongjio's current strength, he was able to open the boundless stone. There were countless experts in the sacred flame royal city. If one did not refine some skills to defend himself, he might not even have the chance to speak when he encountered a problem. The competition in the sacred flame royal city was rather intense. For ordinary people, this was a place rich in resources. Here, as long as one was diligent, one would definitely not starve to death. However, for some people, this place was both a paradise and hell. If one was careless, they would be killed. Sometimes, when facing death, one would not even have the chance to leave behind one's last words. One might not even know who was the culprit. A human life could be very honorable, but it could also be very lowly. It was so lowly that even if one died, no one would know. It was worse than a dead wild dog on the side of the road. At the very least, people would mourn for the dog. Li Zongjio was not the kind of person who liked to leave his life in the hands of others. The business of the 5 Elements Yuan House was extremely busy. There were many people who could afford to use the 5 Elements Yuan House. After all, it was open to the masses. Therefore, there were rooms for all cultivation realms. One of the reasons why the 5 Elements Yuan House could make money was because many people believed that they were actually talented. Therefore, they wanted to give it a try, even if the chances were very slim. Once they succeeded, they would prove themselves and leap onto a higher stage. Therefore, even if they had to pay a huge price, they would still gather the money. This little bit of money was nothing to Li Zongjio. He directly asked for 2 secret cultivation rooms. One of them was for San Tong. Now that San Tong had thought things through, he had brought the elixir over in preparation for a breakthrough. Only then could he live better and protect Li Zongjio better. Protect the young master. Over the past few days, San Tong had saved Li Zongjio's life several times. Including the first time in northern Medicine City, San Tong owed Li Zongjio countless lives. Therefore, he had to increase his strength. Only then could he protect Li Zongjio from the wind and rain. In the secret cultivation room, Li Zongjio chose the fire elemental room. The reason why he chose this place was not because Li Zongjio wanted to break through his cultivation realm, but because this place was highly confidential. The 5 Elements Yuan House could be so big and win the trust of so many people. That was because it had done a good job of keeping secrets. The information of the guests had to be kept confidential. Even if there was a breakthrough in the end, it would not be announced to the public. Therefore, only you would know what your cultivation realm was like. In the 5 Elements Yuan House, only you would know everything in the secret cultivation room. Li Zongjio took out the meteor. After these days of tempering, Li Zongjio's mental energy had been twisted into an extremely hard iron chain. He used his mental energy to control the meteorite in the air. Then, Li Zongjio's mental energy turned into a small knife. Gradually, the stone on the meteorite was peeled off easily. Bang! It was just a small piece of meteorite, but when it fell on the ground, it was as heavy as a 1,000-pound stone. Chapter 296. Li Zongjio stared at the meteorite in his hand with rapt attention. His mind power was also constantly moving. Even the material of this meteorite was rather precious. These fragments were enough to create a weapon that could amplify one's mind power. This meteorite was a treasure from head to toe. A full 6 hours passed. The calculation method of the 5 elemental yuan building was very interesting. It would only calculate the amount based on the time after one had left. After all, no one could be sure what would happen during the process of a breakthrough. Perhaps one would enter a state of epiphany and cultivate in seclusion for a longer period of time. Of course, if one couldn't afford it, the 5 elemental yuan building had countless ways to make them pay up. This is a boundless stone. After 8 hours, a metal stone appeared in Li Zongjio's hand. This metal stone was only the size of a fingernail, but the power it contained was enough to destroy the sacred flame royal city. This boundless stone was enough to give Li Zongjio an advantage within the Yuan monarch realm. However, once one's cultivation base reached the Yuan monarch realm, this item would become useless. However, the invincibility of the Yuan monarch realm was enough to make many people jealous. Even though he felt the boundless stone in his hand, Li Zongjio felt as though he had taken a stimulant. This stone is still a little ostentatious. It seems like I have to find someone to package it. Li Zongjio thought that if he gave the boundless stone to him, he would become a corpse in less than 2 days. Given the amplification effect of the boundless stone, even a level 4 mind master would be suppressed by me. Li Zongjio judged. A level 4 mind master was already a rather powerful existence. The Yuan inscription master who had set up the 5 elemental Yuan building had required a level 4 mind power. This was the most basic. At this moment, Li Zongjio took out the darkness hand bone that he had obtained from the western city's medicinal forest. Although it was only a finger, the dark energy contained within it was relatively pure. When this fellow was alive, he must have been a powerful cultivator of dark energy. He had already cultivated his elemental energy to the point where it could penetrate deep into his bone marrow. Li Zongjio was also very impressed. However, for Li Zongjio, it was also a great tonic. Li Zongjio immediately used the obsidian fire to refine the darkness finger bone. Boom! As the obsidian flames danced. That hand bone actually stood firm within the obsidian fire. It was as if the obsidian fire's level of power was not enough to refine it. Interesting. This person was at least a Yuan king when he was alive. Yuan king realm? However, it was taken out by Beiho Liang. If this item belonged to one of the old ancestors of Beiho Liang's family, then Beiho Liang's family was quite powerful. However, it was impossible. Darkness essence force was extremely hard to come by. If one wanted to successfully cultivate it, it was impossible to succeed without using any special methods. As for the origin of this finger, Li Zongjio did not pursue it. Since you are a tough nut to crack, then come and have a taste of my power. Li Zongjio immediately took out the never-ending stone. Just by keeping it by his side, his mental strength had already increased. Subsequently, the power of the obsidian fire also increased greatly. Finally, there were signs that he would be able to refine it. Boom! When the first wisp of dark energy merged with Li Zongjio's yuan bead, Li Zongjio's eyes were filled with shock. This dark energy was too powerful. It was as though he had eaten an extremely powerful pill. In an instant he went all out. In fact, he could even feel that the dark force in his body was rapidly expanding. At this rate, it is not impossible to reactivate it. Li Zongjio felt his yuan power boiling. Subsequently, he also entered the refining stage. Under the enhancement of the never-ending stone, the power of the obsidian fire also gradually increased. 10 hours later, Li Zongjio's body was surrounded by a pitch-black light. Even the light that was released from his eyes was a thick black color. His lips were also terrifyingly black. Trying to devour me? Li Zongjio immediately activated his Heaven Void God record and directly suppressed the dark energy. In his previous life, Li Zongjio White Stone relied on this heaven void god record to fight the 4 dragon tribe supremes. This proved that the Yuan art that Li Zongjio cultivated was also a top-notch existence. Therefore, Li Zongjio did not give up on this Yuan art. Under the heavenly void divine image record, the dark Yuan power obediently retreated and fell into the Yuan bead in an instant. At this moment, the restless dark Yuan power that filled his body also sank into his body. Boom! Li Zongjio felt the vibrations coming from within the Yuan bead. It was like an egg that was about to break out of its shell. It was as if something was about to be released from the Yuan bead. Buzz! Li Zongjio's mind was suddenly hit by a wave of energy. When this mental energy was released, it felt as if Li Zongjio was directly knocked unconscious. Fortunately, the never-ending stone was still there. Therefore, Li Zongjio's mental energy was strengthened and formed a certain level of resistance. Only then was he able to receive this thought that contained enough information. He carefully read it. When Li Zongjio opened his eyes again, he could feel the shock in his heart and the vibrating energy around him. Hellprajna skill, Extreme Darkness Realm. When he had first seen this name, Li Zongjio had only casually ridiculed these people for coming up with this name. How could they be so casual? However, Li Zongjio only realized why the Black Dragon Soul had been able to survive and become the strongest existence in his previous life after he had finished reading the elemental incantation. There are 10 directions in hell, and each direction is a world. The Extreme Darkness Realm is the first hell. This was the reason why Li Zongjio was shocked. This was the Hellprajna skill, the Extreme Darkness Realm. What it cultivated was a world. Within this Yuan art, if Li Zongjio cultivated it to the peak, he would be able to open up a world within his own spiritual world. This was not the ability of a sovereign realm expert. In his previous life as the evil lord, he had already reached the peak of the sovereign realm. However, Li Zongjio was still very far away from creating a world. However, this Yuan art of the Black Dragon Sovereign actually contained the power of a world. This was the key to breaking through to the sovereign realm. 10 directions of hell. That means that there are a total of 10 of them. A ray of light flashed across Li Zongjio's eyes. Li Zongjio was already clear about where the second part was located. The second part of the Yuan art is hidden within this heavenly dawn medicine manor. I've come to the right place. In his previous life, what had trapped Li Zongjio was precisely the power of a world. Therefore, Li Zongjio was unable to break through. This Hellprajna skill will be the greatest secret. I absolutely cannot let anyone know about it. Li Zongjio thought in his heart. If this news were to be leaked out, he knew how crazy those sovereigns would be. If they were to know about this Hellprajna skill, even if they were to tear Li Zongjio to shreds, they wouldn't have the slightest bit of hesitation. In my previous life, the Black Dragon Sovereign definitely did not succeed in cultivating this Extreme Darkness Realm. The thing that allowed him to live until now was also this Yuan art. Seems like it's not that easy to cultivate after all. Li Zongjio thought in his heart. With Li Zongjio's current comprehension ability, he was actually unable to understand the Hellprajna skill in the slightest. Therefore, if he wanted to truly cultivate it, he would still need time to understand it. In other words, he would need to read more books. Well, I've only browsed through it once, and it's already been 3 days. Li Zongjio looked at the time, and his heart was instantly shaken. Chapter 297. Even with his current mental state, he simply couldn't grasp the flow of time during the process of browsing. This could only mean that Li Zongjio wasn't suitable to cultivate this Yuan art at the moment. If one were to forcefully cultivate, one would not be able to perceive the passage of time at all. In the process, one would think that only a few days had passed outside, but in fact, a few years had passed. This was because one's cultivation level couldn't keep up. At the same time, this Yuan art was too profound, so one couldn't help but be immersed in it. Li Zongjio clearly understood the dangers of this. He temporarily stored the Hellprajna art in the depths of his mind. He would only take it out when he had a better grasp of it. The Black Dragon's origin spirit could be considered to have been activated. As long as it continued to absorb darkness energy, it would be able to help the darkness origin spirit break through. When he came out of seclusion, San Tong had been waiting in the hall for 3 days. When he saw Li Zongjio appear, a trace of pleasant surprise flashed across his eyes. Li Zongjio had been in seclusion for 3 days. Although this was a very normal thing for cultivators, San Tong was still worried that Li Zongjio would miss the Heavenly Day Medicine Manners recruitment test. Young master. All right, go and settle the bill. Li Zongjio casually grabbed a stack of banknotes and handed them to San Tong. San Tong probably wouldn't be able to leave during these 3 days. After all, she probably didn't have that much money on her. The only thing of value she had was the Blood Strike Guard token in her hand. Although she had already broken away from the Blood Strike Guard, the token was still very useful. Hence, San Tong had always kept it on her. After receiving the banknotes from Li Zongjio, San Tong turned around and went to settle the bill. Although this stack of banknotes was a lot, in front of that level 4 medicinal pill, it was nothing at all. Since Li Zongjio trusted her so much, she naturally had nothing to be shy about as long as she didn't disappoint Li Zongjio. You should go buy yourself a set of clothes. You've been dressed like this all day. You look so murderous. I'm going to a place. After you're done, go back to the inn and wait for me. After Li Zongjio finished speaking, he turned around and left. Soon, he disappeared into the crowd. San Tong wanted to follow, but she knew that Li Zongjio didn't want her to. Change my clothes. Although San Tong wasn't wearing the Blood Strike Guard's uniform, the clothes he was wearing had a murderous vibe to them. After all, he had to live a life of fighting and killing, not a carefree life like a young lady. There was nothing he could do about it. However, Tritong was only a young girl who wasn't even 20 years old. When she saw the exquisite clothes in some clothing stores, she was very attracted to them. Plus, San Tong cultivated her origin power, so she was tall and slender. Thus, she was very suitable for wearing good-looking clothes. However, she had never tried them out before. Li Zongjio's words were like a curse that lingered in her mind. Her footsteps involuntarily moved to a spacious, bright clothing store. Li Zongjio followed the route in his memory. After nearly 4 hours, he finally found this place. It was hidden in the southwest corner of Sacred Flame City. It was an extremely dilapidated small building. He stood in front of a small, dilapidated building. Although it was very dilapidated, its exterior was still very principled. Both the sign on the door and the hammer hanging in front of the door showed that although this was a declining blacksmith shop, it was still a blacksmith shop. However, its business wasn't as prosperous as it used to be. It's still the same. Li Zongjio couldn't help but exclaim. No, it should be said that it's still the same. It's still the same. What Li Zongjio was seeing now was several decades earlier than when he had come here in his previous life. This was an extremely magical experience. It was equivalent to seeing something that happened more than a decade ago. If it weren't for Li Zongjio's strong mental strength that allowed him to understand and distinguish his current situation, he would have collapsed at will. Being reborn wasn't a simple thing. It wasn't as simple as starting everything over again. Before he entered, he could already smell the strong smell of alcohol in the courtyard. Without asking, he knew that the owner of this courtyard was an old drunkard. Excuse me, how does customizing a weapon count? Li Zongjio pushed open the door and entered. He saw an old man lying on a rattan chair in the courtyard, swaying back and forth. There were many wine jars around the chair, and the old man was lying on the rattan chair as if he was in a deep sleep. Li Zongjio asked but didn't respond. Li Zongjio knew the rules. He took out his vastness stone. The moment the vastness stone appeared, the old man who was lying down and resting suddenly jumped up from the rattan chair. What's going on? This is a gemstone with mental strength. The old man didn't look like a drunk old man who was dozens of years old at all. Ordinary methods to wake the old man up were futile. Only when the rare material was placed in front of him would the old man come up to him like a pug and shamelessly ask him to give the forging rights of the material to him. Otherwise, even if you poured diesel oil on him and placed a shiny knife on his neck, he still wouldn't help you forge a weapon. He would only help you forge a weapon if he found it to his liking. In his previous life, Li Zongjio didn't know this rule and suffered a lot. Later on, Li Zongjio also learned about it. Every time he came, he wouldn't talk nonsense. In the entire royal city, perhaps there were many people who could forge weapons. For example, the 7-star fire room. The headquarters of the 7-star fire room was in the royal city, so there must be many blacksmithing experts here. However, Li Zongjio knew what kind of people the 7-star fire room was. They were arrogant and self-righteous. Only a few of them were capable. The rest were just famous. And this place could only be known when the battle reached a certain level. Hold on, kid. How did you know I was here? The old man's turbid eyes suddenly emitted a bright light. Instantly, a terrifying murderous intent bloomed in the light as he stared at Li Zongjio. In just a moment, Li Zongjio felt as if he had fallen into a well of fire. The old man before him looked weak. However, in reality, he was a true Yuan monarch powerhouse. Logically speaking, the surrounding buildings should have been demolished and rebuilt. As the royal city, such a place shouldn't exist, as it gave people the impression that it was very backward. However, it was precisely because of the presence of a Yuan monarch powerhouse that the surrounding buildings were preserved and formed a spectacle. In the royal city, one had to be careful if they accidentally turned into a dilapidated building complex. This was because it was very likely. There was a powerhouse living here. It was precisely because this was where he had once lived that everything in the surroundings was not willing to change. Hence, it was preserved. Li Zongjio did not panic in the slightest in the face of this overwhelming aura. He merely stared at the old man before him calmly. Didn't you write on the door that this is a blacksmith shop? I just happened to pass by. If you can't forge it, then I'll have to look at other places. After saying that, Li Zongjio reached out with his hand in an attempt to retrieve the boundless stone. This action frightened the old man so much that he hurriedly smiled apologetically. Don't, sir. I don't dare boast about other things, but within a radius of 100,000 miles, there really isn't anyone with better forging skills than me. You found the right person. What do you want to forge this thing into? The old man immediately retracted his aura and gave a look that said, "You'll regret it if this thing is taken away." Chapter 298. Then you can just forge a flying dagger. Li Zongjio thought for a while. Li Zongjio was proficient in all of the 18 types of weapons, but he did not want to be too ostentatious. Moreover, the weapon forged by that person in his previous life was a long sword. Li Zongjio did not want to be the same as that person. In this life, he wanted to take a different path. Damn, boss, you really know how to give me a difficult problem. You actually want me to forge a throwing knife for such a big gem. Can't you do it? Li Zongjio said indifferently. His eyes gradually revealed a trace of disdain. This kind of disdain was what the old man could not stand the most. What was the meaning of this? This was clearly provoking him. In this world, was there anything that he, the Fire Hammer Elder, could not forge? Just you wait. You actually dare to look down on me. There are still some materials here. You can help me forge something as well. Li Zongjio poured out all of the meteorite fragments. When they landed on the ground, they let out a heavy sound and almost caused the floor to sink. Even the blue and white tiles on the floor were easily smashed by Li Zongjio. So it's this thing. So the meteorite that caused such a commotion in Wolf Fong Valley was here with you? The old man picked up a meteorite fragment and felt it between his fingers. He immediately knew the origin of this object. The way he looked at Li Zongjio could not help but change. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end he did not say anything. After all, he was only a blacksmith. He was only responsible for forging weapons. All right, these materials are enough. I'll charge you a processing fee of 1 billion gold yuan. That's not expensive, right? The old man spread out his palms, indicating that this number was very fair. If an ordinary person were to hear this price, they would probably roll up their sleeves and give this old man a slap. You fucking dare to name such a price? Do you really think that this is someone else's money? Is it falling from the sky? However, Li Zongjio knew that this price was not considered expensive. 1 billion gold yuan was only 10 million purple yuan. Li Zongjio had just plundered a large sum of money. He casually took out 10 million purple yuan and handed it to the old man. How long will it take? 7 days. All right, I'll come and get it in 7 days. After Li Zongjio finished speaking, he turned around and left. Even the old man was a little surprised. Although he knew that Li Zongjio had a good reputation in this industry, not many people knew about him. Moreover, it was rare for them to cooperate in such a trusting manner on their first meeting. This brat is a little interesting. Just who is he to be so clear about my rules? It seems that his background is not small. However, the old man quickly focused his attention on the boundless stone in his hand. The old man couldn't be blamed for being so surprised. After all, this was the first time he had met Li Zongjio. Furthermore, Li Zongjio had given him so many precious materials. Any one of these precious materials was worth more than a little. Then there was so much money, and all of it was given to her. If he were to pack up and leave, Li Zongjio would not be able to find him anywhere in the world. Even if he found him, what could he do? As long as he denied it, Li Zongjio would not be able to do anything about it. That was how arrogant he was. However, since Li Zongjio trusted him so much, then he had to help Li Zongjio improve his temper. The more you trust me, the more I have to repay your trust. That's how stubborn I am. After all, the feeling of being trusted was very precious. Since he had the experience of his previous life, he naturally knew what kind of person the old man was. That was why Li Zongjio trusted him so much. Of course, if Li Zongjio ran away with the items, Li Zongjio would naturally have a way to get them back. When Li Zongjio returned to the inn, the sky was already dark. After a few days of torment, the matter was more or less settled. At the same time, he had also received the letter from the relay station. Li Zongjio only saw the bold and powerful words that Li Tianqing had written on the paper. Everything is fine at home. If it had been a long and eloquent speech, Li Zongjio would have immediately dropped everything and rushed back to Luoxia City. However, when he saw those words, he smiled knowingly. He kept the letter close to his body. When Li Zongjio returned to the inn, the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Inside the inn, there was a figure sitting on a long bench, surrounded by some young masters with exaggerated expressions. One of them held a fan in his hand and wore a pair of long boots with golden threads on them. He couldn't help but drool at the corners of his mouth. "Pretty lady, what do you think? How about a drink? After you drink this cup, we brothers will leave. We definitely won't make things difficult for you. Otherwise, people will say that we locals bully others. That's not good. We, the people of the Sacred Flame Royal City, are also very polite." The woman in the black dress spat out a word. However, her murderous aura instantly froze the faces of the people around her, especially the young master who was the leader. This little girl was actually so insensible to ask him to scram. If he didn't teach her a lesson, she really wouldn't know where she was. "You're still a wild horse. Don't worry, we are all good people. You should know that my brother is the captain of the second company of the city's garrison. If you offend him, I will get my brother to throw you in jail. Once you're in prison, you won't just be serving me alone." The man's obscenities also caused the woman in black dress to become extremely angry. She did not expect that she would provoke such a thing just by changing her clothes. This group of annoying flies had to be traced back to the clothing store. She had only gone to buy a set of clothes, yet she had been pestered by these people. Helpless, she had used her movement technique to shake off these people and returned to the inn to wait for Li Zongjio's return. However, she had been discovered by these people. If Luo Yunyang had still been a bloodstrike guard, San Tong would have had 100 ways to teach him a lesson. However, if he made a move now, it would most likely cause a lot of trouble for the young master. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. These people were getting more and more overboard because of this mindset. They even felt as though they were stepping on his face. When the man saw that San Tong seemed to be intimidated by his name, he actually boldly extended his hand and moved it towards San Tong's face. Just as he was about to touch San Tong's angry yet seductive face, a hand appeared out of nowhere and grabbed his 5 fingers. With a twist of the wrist, 4 of his fingers were immediately dislocated. Crack, crack, ah! A pained cry was heard as Li Zongjio sent the man flying with a jolt of his origin energy. Boom. The person who fell to the ground fell flat on his face, sprawled out on all fours. The surrounding people were all shocked. Who exactly was this person? How could he be so bold? Didn't he know that the person in front of him wasn't simple? Everyone turned their heads and saw a young man standing in front of San Tong. It was this person who had thrown the young master out with a single hand. Young master! San Tong couldn't help but stand up and lower his head in shame. His original intention was not to cause trouble, but he hadn't expected that as a bodyguard, he would cause trouble for his master. What was the point of having a bodyguard like this? If something like this happens again, just throw him out. If you can't beat him, call me over. Li Zongjio said indifferently. Then, he glanced at the two men beside him. These two men were closer to Li Zongjio. When they saw Li Zongjio's gaze, their hearts skipped a beat. Why aren't you scramming? This shout scared all the hedonistic sons off the table. They had only come to support that person. In reality, their family backgrounds were completely inferior to that person's. You've got guts. Just you wait. The man who had been thrown out by Li Zongjio stood up, clutching his wrist. He glared fiercely at Li Zongjio. However, just as he finished speaking, he realized something was wrong. Li Zongjio took a step forward and threw a punch at his face. Boom! Young Master Jiang. Young Master Jiang, are you all right? These young masters hurriedly exclaimed, but young Master Jiang had already been thrown into the opposite shop. He fell on the steps and lost consciousness. His nose was also bleeding profusely. Quick, young Master Jiang is bleeding. Chapter 299. Li Zongjio retracted his fist. Youngsters nowadays really had no regard for the law and were lawless. Kid, you'd better take your girl and hide. The Jiang family is not to be trifled with. Someone in the inn could not help but speak up after witnessing this scene. He kindly advised Li Zongjio. However, Li Zongjio looked at the people around him with extreme disdain. You bunch of trash. More than a dozen men just watched so many ruffians tease a girl. Go back and cut off your own hands. They're useless anyway. Li Zongjio said. His words immediately offended everyone in the inn. A few people who were not convinced directly slammed their palms on the table and stood up with a bang. Kid, what did you say? Say it again if you have the guts. Forget it, forget it. This matter shouldn't be publicized. Don't mind it. Someone quickly came forward to pull him back. It seemed that if he did not pull him back, he would really rush up and fight Li Zongjio to the death. Oh, you want to fight with me? You people bully the weak and bully the weak. Go back to your mother's womb and stay there. No one can bully you in your mother's womb. If you're not convinced, just take a step forward. See how I'll stuff you back into your mother's womb. Li Zongjio said indifferently. He looked at the person who was about to explode in rage and did not care at all. It was as if the other party was just a clown in his eyes. They were all people who came out to make a living. They did not expect that they would be provoked by such a hothead today. They really wanted to pull out their knives right now and chop this young man into 18 pieces. But on second thought, what this young man said was indeed true. Just now, so many of them were staring blankly, and none of them dared to breathe. It was because the other party was the young master of the Jiang family. Although the Jiang family was just one of the many forces in Monarch City and might not even be ranked, this was enough for them. The other party's strength was strong enough. Forget it, forget it. Let's drink. Don't make life difficult for a child. Many people felt ashamed after drinking a few mouthfuls. They immediately paid the bill and left. Of course, there were also people who stayed. Firstly, they had something to do. Secondly, they wanted to see how this Li Zongjio would end up. This matter was not so easy to resolve. The young master of the Jiang family would definitely not let this go. If he left now, he might still have a way out. However, the city guards in the city should be arriving soon. That young man's death was not to be regretted. If he couldn't even learn to swallow his anger, then he would sooner or later die under the blades of the Jianghu. If that was the case, it would be better to suffer a loss here. It was a pity for the lady beside him. Her beauty was rare even in Royal City. Many people were bewitched by San Tong's appearance. In fact, even if Li Zongjio didn't make a move, San Tong would have had countless ways to make these people pay. He would never forget the methods he had learned from the Blood Strike Guards. At the same time, he had reached the level of a Blood Strike Guard, which was already an extreme existence. The number of people he had killed over the past 10 years had piled up like a mountain. These people simply couldn't compare to him. "You look pretty good in this dress." Li Zongjio couldn't help but glance at San Tong. The cold temperament that San Tong had honed wasn't something that ordinary people could compare to. Although she had changed into a long dress and this dress wasn't considered expensive, it still released the temperament of San Tong. Even Li Zongjio rarely had the experience of bringing a lady around in his past life. Although he wasn't used to it, Li Zongjio was a veteran, so he was very good at pretending to be calm and experienced when faced with such a situation. When he heard that Li Zongjio didn't blame him and even praised him, San Tong couldn't help but lower his head in shame. This was a rare emotion. Was this what it meant to be shy? Even San Tong couldn't believe it. It seemed like he was becoming more and more like a normal person. "Manager, why aren't you preparing the food and wine?" Li Zongjio shouted. The food and wine on the table were quickly prepared. "What kind of primary arts do the Blood Strike Guards cultivate?" Li Zongjio asked. "Depending on the individual's attributes, the primary arts they cultivate are different. However, they are all zone-grade primary arts. Only the 5 bronze Blood Strike Guards are qualified to cultivate king-grade primary arts." During the meal, Li Zongjio learned about the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. The Blood Strike Guards were the sharp blade of the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. Not only were they numerous, but they also had an absolute advantage in terms of quality. Even those who had just entered the sect could come into contact with zone-grade primary arts. This was a 4th-grade primary art. Many families couldn't afford it. Even some families in 3rd-grade cities couldn't afford it. For ordinary people, this 4th-grade primary art was enough to last them a lifetime. However, the Blood Strike Guard had already started at such a high level. Given that they were willing to give up on their savings, they naturally had to work even harder. Due to San Tong's outstanding performance in the training camp, he had been rewarded with a king-grade primary art. This was why San Tong's cultivation speed had been so fast and why he had been able to fight his way out of the encirclement of the Blood Strike Guards to become an elite existence. Although innate talent was one of the reasons, the quality of the primary art was also a key factor in determining victory. In his past life, Li Zongjio hadn't been the one to destroy the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. At the time, Li Zongjio hadn't been at the center of the storm either. Li Zongjio had only been hiding deep in the mountains and forests to cultivate. Therefore, this bloody storm hadn't affected Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio wasn't clear about the strength of the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. However, in this life, Li Zongjio would have to personally take action to deal with the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. He still had to understand some of the circumstances of the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. According to the information provided by San Tong, there were more than 5 king-grade powerhouses in the Blood Strike Guard. Any Blood Strike Guard with a 9 bronze cultivation was a king-grade powerhouse. This sort of powerhouse rarely made an appearance. Furthermore, they held some extremely important responsibilities in the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. The existence of these people was the reason the Qingyuan Mountain Villa had become such a core power. Everyone was afraid of them, so they definitely had some ability. If there are 5 king-grade powerhouses, then there must be king-grade powerhouses as well. Li Zongjio thought to himself. While they were eating, they had been eating for almost 2 hours. The dishes on the table were more or less finished. Finally, the sound of armor clanging was heard from outside the inn. Then, a large number of soldiers rushed out. They immediately surrounded the inn. Soon, a man wearing a 3-feathered silver helmet and chainmail walked in. When anyone saw this person, they instinctively retreated to hide. This was a ruthless person. "Who hit my little brother? Get out here." Chapter 300. This roar was full of energy and profound internal energy. He was a Sky Origin Ancestor powerhouse. Even a small captain in this army was at the Sky Origin Ancestor realm. The defensive power of the Sacred Flame Royal City was too frightening. although he was only a grade 1 Sky Origin ancestor. However, this was already a display of power. This man was the captain of the 2nd Platoon of the South City Guard Legion. He wore a 3-feathered crown and was a Sky Origin ancestor. Although he was asking a question, his roar was accompanied by a wave of energy that was directed at Li Zongjio. Boom! One of the legs of the table in front of Li Zongjio broke. However, the table was still stable and stable. Li Zongjio did not make a move. San Tong was the first to stand up. "Who are you?" San Tong stood with his hands behind his back and walked over to Jiang Linjiao. When Jiang Linjiao saw the lady before him, he subconsciously took a step back. Given his strength, he was naturally different from his useless younger brother. He could tell at a glance that the lady before him was not simple. Such a person could kill his younger brother in the blink of an eye. Although her appearance was attractive, that kid must be blind. He had originally thought that she was an ignorant country bumpkin, but now he had a bad premonition. "I am Jiang Linjiao, the captain of the 2nd Platoon of the South City Guard Legion. Who are you?" Jiang Linjiao asked cautiously. One could not be careless when doing things in Royal City. The slightest carelessness could lead to eternal damnation. When that happened, the real tragedy would begin. Therefore, he had to get to the bottom of this. First, he had to know who the lady before him was. San Tong threw a token to Jiang Linjiao, who reached out to catch it. When he saw the words on the token, his eyes widened. He felt as though his heart was being chained up. He could not breathe and felt as though he was about to suffocate. Jiang Linjiao took a deep breath. His hands trembled as he returned the token to San Tong. "But, my lord, please forgive us. We did not know that you were coming. Capture that kid immediately. I want to break his legs on the spot. How dare he offend my lord?" Jiang Linjiao shouted behind him. "There is no need for that." San Tong replied nonchalantly. "All of you are dismissed. You know what to do." The Blood Strike Guard was the symbol of Qingyuan Manor. Although they were not part of the organization, the person behind Qingyuan Manor was not someone these small characters could afford to offend. Furthermore, killing a single Blood Strike Guard was akin to making an enemy out of the entire Blood Strike Guard. It was akin to poking a hornet's nest. The consequences would be terrifying. The Blood Strike Guards had used their blood to carve out a bloody path. That was why everyone was so afraid of the Blood Strike Guards. Jiang Linjiao knew the severity of the situation. Other people might be arrogant because they were officials in the royal city, but Jiang Linjiao also knew that the Jiang family had close ties with the Qingyuan villa. Jiang Linjiao's SSS power would. Clearly, the Blood Strike Guard had entered the city on an important mission. Otherwise, he wouldn't have disguised himself like this. Jiang Linjiao heaved a sigh of relief when he heard San Tong's order. He hurriedly took his men and left. When the shift changed, he would come back in casual clothes to apologize. If this matter wasn't handled properly, the Jiang family would suffer. However, if it was handled properly, this would be an opportunity. Although the young man sitting to the side was calmer and looked younger, Jiang Linjiao could tell that the young man's temperament was more arrogant and he had a fearless attitude. To be able to have such a performance, he was definitely an important person in the Qingyuan villa. His chance had come. As Jiang Linjiao led his men away, he started to think about how he could get into Li Zongjio's good books. The token San Tong had taken out was indeed a Blood Strike Guard identity token. There was no doubt that it was genuine. Only the inner circle of the Blood Strike Guard knew about San Tong's defection. They had never intended to let San Tong live for so long. Plus, this sort of thing couldn't be announced to all the factions. Therefore, the token was naturally authentic. When the diners who were waiting to watch the show saw the woman take out a token and scare them away, they knew that the two of them were not simple and their strength was not ordinary. No wonder that young man dared to act so arrogantly. It turns out that he has an even greater background. This is bad. Luckily, we didn't pick a fight with them. Even Jiang Linjiao is afraid of them. When Li Zongjio had cursed them earlier, a few hot-blooded people had wanted to make a move. However, it seemed like they didn't have such thoughts anymore. They just hoped that Li Zongjio wouldn't cause trouble for them. Getting scolded by Li Zongjio would be fine. The reputation of the Blood Strike Guard is really big. When he saw Jiang Linjiao's frightened expression, Li Zongjiu realized that the Blood Strike Guard actually had a lot of power. Blood flows like rivers wherever the Blood Strike Guard passes, regardless of whether it's in the river east or the river north. This reputation was established in the early days. Anyone who is named by the Blood Strike Guard cannot escape. San Tong spoke softly. Although this seemed like the pride of the Blood Strike Guard, it had been accumulated through countless cruel massacres. It wasn't something worth bragging about. Besides, San Tong had already been named by the Blood Strike Guard. Therefore, San Tong knew that the only reason he was still alive was because Li Zongjiu was by his side. However, even if Li Zongjiu was there, he might not be able to protect him for long. The Blood Strike Guard hadn't caught up to him yet. Something must have gone wrong. He just had to wait for them to finish what they were doing. They would definitely catch up. Although there was no way to kill her in Royal City, there were times when one didn't have to carry a blade and walk over to kill someone. There were also countless other ways to kill someone. Even in the city, there were many powers that had been bought over by the Qingyuan Mountain Villa. These people were the reason for their existence. Therefore, the influence of the Blood Strike Guard was rather large. Even a mere token of the Blood Strike Guard, which was only a token of the Blood Strike Guard, could frighten the captain of the City Protection Legion to this extent. It was no wonder that a mere Blood Strike Guard had dared to order the Guard General of Wudingsheng Pass to obey him with just a few words. Unfortunately, they had run into a tough nut to crack at the time. Xue Zhaotian wasn't someone to be trifled with. Most importantly, Xue Zhaotian was one of those people who feared nothing. As long as one followed the rules, everything could be discussed. As long as one didn't break the law or endanger the dynasty, everything would be fine. However, if one dared to act recklessly or even try to harm the dynasty's interests, they would be dealt with properly. Therefore, when Li Zongjiu had helped them, Xue Zhaotian had immediately given them the go-ahead. Li Zongjiu was also rewarded decisively by locking those people up for half a month. By the time they came out, Li Zongjiu would probably have already entered the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Don't worry. I will destroy the Qingyuan Mountain Villa sooner or later. Li Zongjiu said faintly as he released a wave of killing intent. Chapter 301. Li Zongjiu then copied a Yuan skill book and handed it to San Tong. Given your current strength, I'm afraid that you won't even be able to protect yourself in this city. Cultivate this Yuan skill properly. If you use it properly, you'll be able to kill someone of a higher level. Li Zongjiu said. San Tong opened the book in his hands. There were only 3 words written on the book. Yuan Dark Spike. After San Tong finished reading the entire cultivation method, he immediately sensed the immense power contained within this Yuan skill. Yuan Dark Spike was a top-notch assassination Yuan skill. It could increase one's strength and speed by several times in an instant, achieving the effect of a sneak attack. This move was also very suitable for his dagger. What Li Zongjiu didn't mention was that this Yuan Dark Spike had been left behind by a top-notch assassin in his previous life. At the time, this assassin had been very famous. He was also a righteous man, and the people he assassinated were all sinners. Li Zongjiu had never met this person before. He had only inherited the Yuan skill from this Yuan skill. If that was the case, he could be considered a friend of Li Zongjiu's that he had never met before. San Tong was born as a Blood Strike Guard, so he had an advantage when it came to training in this area. He was able to unleash this move from his roots and unleash a profound and far-reaching effect. This Yuan Dark Spike required one to first place oneself in the darkness. Only when one was deep in the darkness would one be able to see other dark places. Don't worry, young master. I'll practice diligently. There was only one Yuan Dark Spike move, and it didn't have any grade. Perhaps there was one, but Li Zongjiu hadn't mentioned it. However, San Tong could tell that this move wasn't simple. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, they sent the Jiang family away. Li Zongjiu also returned to his room to rest. In the Sacred Flame Royal City, there were always a few streets that were still bustling with activity even though it was late at night. It was as though this was a city that never slept. This kind of indulgence was also an opportunity to be impudent. As the examination of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor drew closer, some activities and gatherings were frequently held in the Holy Flame Royal City. This was a way to build relationships with various factions. After all, the fact that these people were able to stand out in their own provinces had already proven their strength. In addition, there were also some people who had a little reputation in this recruitment. Some young masters with unique foresight naturally had to act quickly. Golden Han Palace. Among the nightclubs in the city, it was definitely one of the top 10. One would be embarrassed to go in if they didn't spend at least 1,000,000 gold coins a night. In a dazzling room in the Golden Han Palace, a group of young men and women were drinking and chatting merrily. There were also top-notch singers and dancers performing in the venue. Young Master Yi, this is Zhang Hexuan, young Master Zhang from the Water Jade Spirit City. Beiho Liang, who originally had an arrogant attitude, now had a respectful and humble expression before a black-cloaked man. It was so much so that when he spoke, he was very careful in fear of offending him. When young Master Yi heard Zhang Hexuan's name, a trace of light flashed across his eyes. He looked at the indifferent Zhang Hexuan. Beiho Liang quickly introduced, "This is the third young master of the Yi clan from the Heavenly Flame City." "Greetings, young master Yi." Zhang Hexuan didn't put on any pretense and directly cupped his hands and said. Yi Gushing looked at Zhang Hexuan. With a wave of his hand, a beautiful maid beside him passed a cup of wine to Zhang Hexuan. The day after tomorrow is the day of the examination of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor. This time, there are nearly 3,000 candidates in the 13 provinces. In the end, only one of them will be selected. What do you think your rank will be? Yi Gushing looked at Zhang Hexuan and asked. Zhang Hexuan smiled when he heard this. He extended his hand and took the wine cup that the maid passed over. I don't dare to say that in the Kuan province, no one can compete with me. In the other 12 provinces, other than the rumored disciple of the Medicine Emperor, Emosuli, there are no more than 5 people who can defeat me. Zhang Hexuan said. These words were really arrogant. But in reality, Zhang Hexuan was still holding back. However, this was the first time they met, so there was no need to be so arrogant. Thus, he said 5 people. In reality, Zhang Hexuan didn't put anyone in his eyes. Other than the somewhat threatening Emosuli, there was also Li Zongjio, who he didn't know the true depth of. This Li Zongjio, Zhang Hexuan always felt a little strange and uneasy. After all, this Li Zongjio was able to reach such a level. Moreover, Zhang Hexuan didn't know how he did it. Thus, he temporarily included this Li Zongjio in his consideration. He wasn't a brainless person. Now that he was able to reach this step, he had his own reasons. If he was incomparably arrogant and didn't consider anyone else, he would have been thrown into the wilderness long ago. Ha, good. Adding that Emosuli, then you are at least 7th place. Come, let's toast to the future 7th place of the freshman ranking. Yi Gushing raised the wine cup in his hand. If this Sun's answer didn't satisfy him, then this Sun would probably only end up being thrown out. The Yi clan was an overlord in this city. The head of the Yi clan was half of this dynasty. He was the judge of this dynasty and the head of the Ministry of Justice. He was in charge of overseeing all the officials and all the cities. If anyone in the government committed any crimes, the head of the Yi clan would be the one to deal with them. Holding the power of life and death, how many of these civil and military officials could be clean and honest? Thus, most people had something in their hands. It was directly in the hands of Yi clan. Just based on this, how many people dared to offend them? They would be led by the nose. Therefore, the power of Yi clan was also quite great. And the reason why they had such great power was that Yi Gushing's aunt was the current emperor's most beloved concubine. Such a relationship, in addition to the Yi clan's many years of accumulation, made them even more like a crouching tiger. Zhang Hexuan and Yi Gushing drank a cup. One could imagine how heavy this cup of wine was. Even Beiho Liang was looking at the Sun with envy. Strictly speaking, Beiho Liang and Yi Gushing were not friends. If they were to talk about friends, Beiho Liang wasn't at that level yet. He couldn't even enter Yi Gushing's eyes. Those young masters from first-class cities didn't even have the qualifications. You, a mere second-class city, would naturally have to queue up behind. Therefore, Bei Ho Liang wasn't qualified to drink with Yi Gushing. However, Zhang Heshuan drank this cup of wine. That meant that Zhang Heshuan had become a person of value in Yi Gushing's eyes. Come sit. 2 days later, we'll see how you perform. I've placed a huge bet on you. Yi Gushing said. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Obviously, Yi Gushing wasn't someone who was easy to get along with. If you had something that he valued, then it would be better. If you didn't, then I'm sorry. Even if you were thrown into a pigsty to feed the pigs, there was nothing wrong with that. As the saying goes, accompanying a king is akin to accompanying a tiger. That was still too early to say. Even the left and right hands below were countless times more ferocious than a tiger. Zhang Heshuan naturally took a seat. However, Bei Ho Liang didn't have a seat. He could only stand awkwardly behind this Sun. Zhang Heshuan acted as if he didn't see Bei Ho Liang's predicament. If Bei Ho Liang couldn't even handle a mere Li Zongjiao, then he was useless. How many days had passed? How many opportunities had been wasted? If this was really the case, then Bei Ho Liang was useless. Zhang Heshuan had overestimated Bei Ho Liang before. He had already hooked up with Yi Gushing, a rich young master in King City. He naturally didn't put a mere Bei Ho Liang in his eyes. The two of them weren't even on the same level. Along the way, there were many people who continuously toasted the Sun, drinking and chatting merrily. Those who were present were all descendants of royalty and aristocrats. They held a lot of power in their hands. Although they were in King City, they could affect the world tens of thousands of miles away. That was power. With a wave of their hand, a storm would be formed. In the eyes of these young masters, human lives were nothing. They didn't need to go out of their way to recruit these people. Although Zhang Heshuan was a genius, he hadn't reached the level where they would go out of their way to recruit him. Unless Zhang Heshuan was the eldest disciple of the Heavenly Stellar Medicine Manor and was ranked on the Heavenly Stellar Medicine rankings. The reason why he was playing with this Sun Crane was because he had placed a heavy bet on this Sun Crane. These young masters usually had nothing to do, so they gambled. Once there was an activity, there would be a huge bet. What they were betting on this year was the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor's newcomer ranking. In the end, only 300 people were recruited. However, there were only 16 spots on the newcomer ranking. The odds were very high. The more they could not let their enemies obtain them. For a lone wolf like Li Zongjiao, this kind of defense mechanism was originally something he wanted to do, but in the end, he didn't get anything. This made him very unhappy. Now it was different. Now that Li Zongjiao was rich, of course, he had to equip himself well. 7-Star Fire Room's main shop. As an illustrious existence in the Saint Flame Empire, the items in the 7-Star Fire Room were guaranteed to be of high quality. Only they were able to forge top-grade weapons. With the help of the Yuan Inscription Master, it was natural that they could make some powerful Yuan weapons. Although Li Zongjiao had no interest in the 7-Star Fire Room after he became Evil Lord in his previous life, a truly powerful Yuan weapon had to be specially refined by someone. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to succeed. For the current Li Zongjiao, some of the Yuan weapons in the 7-Star Fire Room were enough. They walked into the main shop of the 7-Star Fire Room. The hall alone was as big as the courtyard, and the decorations around it were also very exquisite. One could see that there were different exhibition areas, and in each area, there was a special attendant to explain and introduce the items. Some Yuan weapons were quite strange, and no one knew what kind of effect they would have. Out of curiosity, people would come forward to inquire, so sometimes they would need someone to introduce them. Of course, there were also some prices. In the hall, in addition to many customers who stopped to look, there were also many attendants who were guiding them. Once there was a commission, it would be a very impressive figure for them. When he saw Li Zongjiao and San Tong looking around, a young man knew that his chance had come. This was definitely a big order. The first thing that caught everyone's attention was San Tong. San Tong, who had changed into a long black dress, was very attractive no matter where she went. At first glance, people would think that Li Zongjiao was San Tong's servant, bodyguard, or something like that. However, only people with a certain amount of experience would be able to tell at a glance. Between the two of them, Li Zongjio was the backbone, because the girl's footsteps were always behind Li Zongjio, and she was always vigilant of her surroundings. She was the beautiful girl, not Li Zongjio. To be able to hire such a beautiful girl as a bodyguard, Li Zongjio was either very rich, or his family was very rich. Such a target person was naturally the favorite of the salesman. In the aspect of yuan weapons, the water was too deep. Many flashy but impractical yuan weapons were very popular. Many people would specially pre-order some of the more powerful yuan weapons, the fresher and more popular ones, so that they could be taken out at this crucial moment to attract attention. Sometimes, when a yuan weapon was released, it would be very popular. Even if he was a salesman, he had to find the right position. That young man's gaze was sharp and venomous. Some of the more glamorous yuan tools were placed there, yet he did not even look at them. He merely swept his gaze across them, as if he did not care about the ordinary goods here at all. Just this point alone was enough to confirm that he was not looking for ordinary yuan tools. "Young master, I am a salesman of this shop, but the yuan weapons here do not meet your requirements?" The young man was not very old, looking like he was in his 20s. However, his eyes were somewhat sharp, and it was obvious that this young man had been here for a long time. "Do you have weapons with strong killing power?" Li Zongjio asked directly, without much nonsense. He was here to buy things, not to chat and show off. "Yes, of course. Our 7-star fire room is best at killing weapons, but those kinds of weapons are not on display here. Please follow me," the young man said, and then led Li Zongjio to the second floor. There were relatively fewer people on the second floor because the price alone was 10 times higher than the price on the first floor. Many people did not even dare to look at it. This is the second floor of the 7-star fire room. If you want weapons with strong killing power, you can take a look at these. Divine Fire Thunder, level 3 yuan weapon. Once it is triggered by yuan power, it can create a yuan qi explosion effect within a radius of 50 meters. At the same time, it can release the power of fire with a burning effect. If it is thrown into the army camp, just one of it is enough to severely damage a camp. Most importantly, it is only the size of a palm. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.